Okay, we're live. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you another Unlocking Age of Sigmar. This is, as always, another special edition with one of the legends of the Warhammer YouTubers community. But beyond that, our resident rock star, Remington Steele. Thanks for joining me, man.
First off, I would describe myself as a legend rather than a legend.
Oh, I like that. I'm gonna have to use that.
And secondly, a little disclaimer, because there are other YouTubers out there that are far more experienced Beastmen, players, and authorities on them. First one that comes to mind is Mr. Reef Beastman, a dear friend of mine, but I've jumped the gun on you, my friend. I'm sorry, I couldn't hold back. Let's put the call out, and I answered first. So, you got to forgive any errors, but having said that, this is a brand new game.
We're going to have an extra special invitation for Reef for something that's going to encompass something much more than just an army book unlocking. An extra special invitation for him beyond just the Beastmen. So yeah, you did jump the gun, but I hope he doesn't mind that too.
And one more thing, Mitch, regarding Beastmen. I don't think there's ever been any Beastmen champions from Warhammer 8th. They just didn't exist. People didn't even take Beastmen to tournaments and so on. So kind of everyone's a newbie when it comes to Beastmen because they got so nerfed in their opening book. In fact, in their only real book, things were so overpriced, etc. So this one's great. Now you can just take whatever you want. Plus, there's some souped up tricks you can pull with your Brave Shaman to make them even better. So I can't wait to go through them with you.
Awesome. So what I'm looking to do is and I have to tell you that my field, I want to try and introduce people to Beastmen as well. So maybe one of the first things we can do is just give a little bit of an overview of what are Beastmen, because I know plenty of people that have come, that are legacy players, are going to understand, especially people that have played 8th edition. I'm going to tell you from my point of view, and I mentioned this to you when we were having our own little private conversation. The last time I played Beastmen, where I actually played against an army of Beastmen. It wasn't even an army of Beastmen. They were part of Chaos back in 5th edition. And there aren't many Beastmen players or people where I guess they bring that army out in my local area. And I play where there's lots of shops. So if they're using it, they're not really bringing it out. So maybe you could give us just a little brief history for the army for anybody who's new to Age of Sigmar, who's coming in from other systems, and would care to know some of the background.
Sure thing. Now, Beastmen appeared in various guises back from the early 80s and pewter lead miniatures. Even before slaughter bases, you could get, for example, you could get some Minotaurs. And they were the size of humans. They weren't on the big 40mm bases. And they brought in a few, what we now know as Gores, but back then they're just called Beastmen. And I believe Marauder miniatures, which was it's kind of like part of Games Workshop still. They put out a line of Beastmen, I think maybe 15 or 20 different kinds. And you could buy them in a blister pack of 5 for, say, £1.99, which is, I don't know, about $3 at their lowest. But I'd say the sculpt quality is nowhere near as good as they are now. They didn't have their own army book. They were just affiliated with Chaos Warriors or Monsters of Chaos or even Beasts of Chaos, the book that they appeared in, where you could actually field units as part of a Chaos army. 5 years ago, I think now, the Beastmen got their own army book, but unfortunately it wasn't updated. So when I say it was nerfed before, that's an understatement. Its most interesting models came in the rare section, and these were the Jabberslife, the Giant, the Sigor, and the Gorgon. All models that if you walked into a store and you chose the Beastmen armies, you'd want to pick them, just as your son, Mitch, has come in and he's getting the big, big monsters. Everyone's into that, and that's awesome. But with the Beastmen, it was a big slap in the face because they came in at 275 points for these monsters. And, they kind of had toughness 5 or toughness 6 or wounds 5 or wounds 6. with no saving throw, maybe a 6-up saving throw, no way of regenerating your wounds back. So they were just cannon fodder, very expensive cannon fodder. So that was a big kick in the teeth. So what happened, the way the Beastmen armies developed then, was that people started just fielding the core choices. And that was a choice of 3 different things, maybe 4. You had Ungors and Ungor Raiders, which are kind of like the pathetic minions of the Beastmen, most close to humans, if you like. Then you had the Gors, which were the kind of souped up Ungors. And then you had the chariots. You could have Tuskor chariots, and then maybe Harpies, but I don't know if they counted towards your core. So what happened was players were just getting huge units of Gors, which were pretty cool, you know, crap saving throw, but you could fill them with 2 hand weapons. So they get an extra attack, and there's a chance you could get something special called Primal Fury, where you could re-roll fail to hit rolls, and even get extra attacks if you were really lucky. So once in combat, these guys were really good. Then you had the hard-hitting force. You maybe had the Bestigors as your special choice. And again, these guys were double-handed weapons, and these were the kind of elite of the Beastmen. And it kind of was stuck there, Mitch. And you had the Harpies, and they were kind of redirectors, or again, they were just arrow fodder. And then finally, you had one tactic which went around, and it was to do with something called the Herdstone. And you could get a Beastman Shaman called Bray Shaman, and they get all kinds of buffs from being near this stone. So that was kind of it, you know. So people didn't choose the Beastmen for I was going to say professional games, but I don't mean that. For competitive gaming, they didn't really choose it. If they did, you know, your name was probably Mr. Reed. And he ended up in the lower echelons. I mean, if he got in the top 50, he counted that as a win. That's how powerful the Beastmen were.
I think the impression I get, and I've seen a lot of content on YouTube, certainly with people playing Beastmen. The impression I get is that it almost became a thing of just how, you know, low they were on the totem pole in competitive circles. That it was almost a badge of honor to bring this type of an army to a hyper competitive circuit and place anywhere but the bottom. If you could do that, that was your victory.
Oh man, take you back to school days. You know, that group of nerds in the corner that weren't very cool. You know, they weren't into all the pop bands or into the heavy metal, the big rock bands, and they didn't have much of an identity apart from being the ones kind of stuck in the corner. That's me. That's the Beastmen right there. You know, they're kind of like the black sheep of the Warhammer Fantasy family.
Very cool, very cool. Okay, so this is I guess where our accomplishment here today is not just really, again, introducing people who may not know much about this particular army, but also try to express to everybody, including like legacy players, that in Age of Sigmar they've got a whole range of new rules, which really changes, maybe not fundamentally how the army's played, but in some ways it could. But also, you know, the fact that they could be more competitive and a little bit scarier on the table in a number of different ways. Now, I've only skimmed through this book. I mean, I'm kind of doing almost one of these a day, apart from this past weekend where I went away with the family. But the effort is to try and get these banged out as quickly as possible. So I'm kind of behind on my homework.
No, don't worry about it.
So I'm going to be reading.
We all are. There's so much content that's come out just, you know, in the War Scrolls alone.
It's like 400 of these things. I mean, it's too much.
We're still discovering it. You know, I mean, I did my first Age of Sigmar game a few days ago with Andy 2D6 and a guy called Pezapu, and we had a load of fun. But I brought up 3 big trays of armies, and we only got time to play one in the end because we were having so much fun, just you know, dusting about and whatnot. But I ended up using the Beastmen because they were kind of like the one I was actually most familiar with.
Yeah.
And on that note, they're a great army to start with because they are so, I was going to say one-dimensional in the sense that you've just got to get into combat as quickly as possible. And when we go through the war scrolls, you'll see a lot of the special attributes you can give to your units enhance the movement.
And that's the vision I get when I think of a Beastman army, that it's a high model count, just rush of a wave of forces coming across the battlefield and taking tremendous losses because they're that one-dimensional, but that they would just pour over you and wipe you out. That's their methodology. I don't get the impression that there's any technology or any magic, casting other than maybe enhancing that kind of stuff. This is what I see. Just a herd of scary half man, half goats, half beasts of whatever kind.
And on that note, Mitch, if you had a Age of Sigmar battle and one side was Beastmen, if you balanced it by having wounds as your balancer, I think it'd be an unbalanced game, not in favor of the Beastmen, because I think 20 Gors would struggle to take out 10 dwarves.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's that imbalance. A lot of people, the first thing they think of is wounds. I think that's a horrible way of imbalancing. I think more is, and I see these ridiculous combinations, these math combinations. Add this, multiply by that, divide by this. Abilities. I don't know if any of those are working, but it's too hard. It's too hard. I can understand something maybe a little bit simpler, like for instance, X number of war scrolls. You only have 8 to 10 or 8 to 12 selections. And each one has a maximum of, let's say, 20 wounds. If you want to go higher than that, you got to eat up one of your war scroll selections. Something along those lines. I haven't really worked it out. I've looked at a number of different things that people have been trying to instill for organized events. And I still haven't made up my mind on what it is. Right now, I'm in the mode of just put it out there and have a game and enjoy it. And let's worry about the competitive stuff some other time down the road.
Yeah, I mean, me and Andy, we did it that way. We'd have 8 war scrolls each. And when I got back home and I was recording the battle report for it, I actually counted up the points from each side and how much that would cost if we were playing 8th edition. So we just picked 8 scrolls and we looked down at it. And I did have 30 best. I had 30 or so Bestigor, and I took them down to 10. And I had 30 Gors, and I took them down to something like 22, just so it kind of looked a bit fairer. And when I did the points, I was only 150 points out.
There you go.
So just from having goodwill, good faith, and good sportsmanship, we got it bang on there. Because everyone knows the Beastman army was overpriced anyway with its monsters, and I took 2 of them.
And I'm going to be doing a video about some of this stuff too, because I still think that there's a lot of questions about how sudden death works and what you can do to either benefit yourself or not make it an auto win but I have the way I don't think that even I've expressed myself. I haven't seen anybody else out there, just for expedience sake, so battle reports aren't 2 hours long like these videos are, where there's a strategy in placing your stuff on the table. And one of those strategies is I put out a unit. I don't build a list in advance. You don't build a list in advance. I put out a unit. You put out a unit. And at some point, one of us is it's a game of chicken. One of us is going to stop, and then the other person, I'm going to be like, I'm done. I have this like maybe a low model count army that I'm looking to play. I've completed maybe a battalion formation for some extra abilities. Who knows what it is? And you've got a Beastman army that is built on having lots of bodies. Now you have to make the decision. How far do I have to go before a sudden death situation kicks in, if it hasn't already, to the point where it makes sense for me to stop, so I don't lose out be on the downside of that, but yet I can still put out a really comparable army that's going to be able to achieve a goal. Or, you know what? I got a sudden death. I'm going to embrace that, and I was prepared to put out these 2 or 3 extra units with lots of models in them, and they're going to go on the table, and I am going to focus on tabling you, that kind of thing, because that's what a Beastman should be. They shouldn't get penalized like Skaven or Orcs and Goblins for being that army that has high model count. There's got to be something that balances that out.
Absolutely. I believe the single first most important tactic of the Beastmen is your movement placement at the start. That's the single most important thing. And yet it's the thing that when you're just in the grips of the game and you just want to get your models on the table and you're just admiring each other's army and you're looking at scenery and scenarios and so on, looking back on the games, it's always about how you place them, the effectiveness of your units. is dependent on how you place them in that first thing. Because if you put your Minotaurs in the wrong place at the start, they're going to be ineffective or get shot down or not do what you want them to do. And the game that I played, I ended up winning because I believe I placed my models down in the best way at the start. It wasn't because I had better troops, just that movement placing.
Yeah, it was the same thing in 8th edition. Deployment was a huge factor. The movement phase was a huge factor. I think it's even more so now. And yeah, we'll see what the specifics are of each of the units when we jump into it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we can start looking at the way and I'm not sure if you've actually seen any of the ones I've done. And
yeah,
I don't fault anyone for not doing it because they're like 2 hours long almost. So hopefully we won't go that far with this one. But I want to try and go through the generic stuff first. And if we have time, you can circle back. We can circle back and look at the actual special characters. Okay. And then let's take a look also at the formations and see what kind of benefits there are. And if we get a chance to get a gauge on within the framework of the games itself, if this unit is better or worse as a utility or in its role, or if its role has changed in Age of Sigmar versus 8th. Any kind of quick comment on that. We can talk about strategies as we go through this stuff. Okay, just let me know if you see this. I'm going to go ahead and I want to not just share it, but I think I want to try and lock it in. See if I'm doing this right. All right. Okay. So how are we looking there?
I don't know. I can still see you.
You can still see me.
Since you started presenting.
All right. Maybe that didn't work. All right. I'm going to stop presenting. I'm going to go and share. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
There we go.
There you go. All right.
Let's see. How's that?
Yeah, man.
Is that working? All right. Looks like we've got the Beast Lord. Obviously, we're going to start with a general. You always start with a general. Why don't we go down some of the abilities? Hey, why don't you take the first one, dude?
Sure thing, man. I mean, the last game I played Malagor the Dark Omen, and he's kind of comparable to the Brave Shaman choice that you get. So I'm thinking that Kazrak One Eye, the character, or the guy that's on a chariot, hopefully we get time to talk about them, is actually comparable to a Beast Lord. They're not that much better. So this guy, you can choose between arming him with dual axes, and if you do that, you can re-roll hits of 1. If you roll a 1 on you to hit, and your to hit roll is you only need a 3+. So if you roll a 1, you can re-roll it. So that's really, that's a decent chance of getting a hit in, and you get 6 attacks with a -1 rend. So I like that one a lot. If you're into the combat side of things. Now, back in 8th edition, it was pretty hard to protect your Beast Lord or your standard bearers with anything more than maybe a 4-up save. Maybe you could get a 3-up save. You'd have to get magical items in to do that. But if you arm him with the Brave Shield, you can have a 3+ save in the combat phase.
Nice.
So that doesn't protect you against shooting, and as we know, that's a big, that's a big weakness in the Beastmen army. You're going to get shot at in the first couple of rounds. Expect to lose a lot of models.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 4-up. 3-up in hand-to-hand combat is good. I've seen a bunch of mechanics like that. I've even seen some that where you get that plus only for maybe against shooting. I see that in some of the Elven armies, for example. 4-up is fairly standard. You very rarely find a 3-up. Maybe if you just like the really special characters. And 5 wounds is pretty standard. I'm a little surprised that it's 5 wounds for a Beast Lord character that's supposed to be kind of butch, kind of tough. And a lot of regular hero types are at 5 wounds. I would have expected him to be a 6, like you see with like the orcs and goblins army. A lot of those guys are at a 6. So that's a bit of a surprise. But he is very, very killy. 6 attacks or 3 with the great axe, 3 up is good. Even when even if you deal with the scenario, you get the rerolls. That's phenomenal. But the rends is a big deal. Here, it's just a matter of, are you going to go for the 3 attacks with the extra rend, extra damage per, or 6 attacks and deal with just a -1 rend and 1 damage? I don't know which one. I don't know if which math would be better. But it's nice to see that they're both really good.
Yeah, I'm loving this guy. I think I've just in my head I've been calculating the averages if you're in combat with a hero, just with your dual axes or with a weapon and shield. I think you can pretty much guarantee you'd get 3 wounds per combat round on a hero.
Yeah,
guy, especially if you're re-rolling ones on the hit. So that's kind of cool. But with if you're fighting a dwarf character who's got who's got a rerollable armor save, I'm just thinking of the what they call the iron guys and the dwarves.
The Iron Drakes or the Iron Breakers.
The Iron Breakers, that's it. I mean, those guys are so hard to kill.
Yeah.
So hard to kill. So if this guy found himself fighting some Iron Breakers, and he doesn't have, he only has -1 rend there with the normal weapons, he's going to struggle to wound them. Yeah. However, if you get that great axe going, you only get the 3 attacks. Let's say you hit with 2 of them on a 3+, then you need a 3 up to wound. Let's say you definitely get one of those through when it's a -2 rend and 2 damage. So maybe you're taking out 2 models. If you're lucky.
Yeah, that can add up though.
Yeah.
I like this command ability. So let's see. Any attacks it made in the previous turn if it resulted in an enemy model being slain. So you got it. This is a little bit of a downside. Okay. You have to have gotten into combat and actually killed something. You have to have slain a model. So that's the first time I've seen a command ability like that, where you need to fulfill a specific scenario, as opposed to you could just do this. But once you do, so you want to get this guy into combat as quickly as possible, of course. Until your next phase, and this is an automatic apparently, so you don't have to actually initiate it. It automatically happens. All Grey Herd units in your army can add 1 to their charge, run, and hit rolls while they're within 16 inches of him. So the key with this guy is that it's going to really not impact the current phase, because if you've got him in combat and he's slain somebody, everybody has already initiated a charge. The only way that it might affect is the extra it's a hit roll, which for units that have not yet been activated. So you want to activate him with this ability. You want to get him to be activated to kill something in a unit as quickly as possible, as early in a combat phase. So all successive activations on your part get that extra +1 hit. And then the following turn, you'll have the ability for these guys to then charge anybody who hasn't initiated a charge. You want to be able to do that as well. But unfortunately, it says only until your next hero phase. So am I reading this wrong? It seems like you kind of lose that you'd have to do it again for you to get the bonus to charge for the following turn.
Yeah, but that's if he's in combat, that's cool. I think the key here is to get him to stay in combat.
Yeah.
So for me, I would be giving him the Grey Herd shield.
Yeah.
So he gets that 3 up save. He's only got 5 wounds. So keep this guy alive, and he's going to kill at least 1 or 2 models per combat phase. And if you've got some gores nearby, instead of them having a 4 up to hit, they're going to have a 3 up to hit, and that's massive.
Yeah, I definitely see. He's obviously going to be running as quickly as he could towards the enemy. Any thoughts on his utility versus how you might have kitted him out in 8th edition and what you might have used him for?
Now, a lot of the time I couldn't really afford a Beast Lord because I used a Wargore Standard Bearer, and I used the Doom Ball most of the time. Because the Doom Ball, hopefully we get to him. He is amazing. He's the best, pound for pound. He was the best model in the Beastmen army.
Oh, we will be getting to the Doom Ball.
So, you know, if you had a Doom Ball and you had a Beast Lord, that's a whack of points there.
Yeah.
No.
So I mean, with that in mind, then my thinking is that he's going to be kind of a decoy. You know, you'll have other things on the table that may be a little bit scarier than the Beast Lord, and probably you're going to get the focus of attacks or shooting or magic or just putting, you know, placing stuff to counter it. And the Beast Lord is going to be one of those guys that if they pay attention to him, they're not attacking something else that's a high value target. And if they are not paying attention to him, he's going to get in there and he's going to get his little ability off and do some serious damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Beastmen have great movement. And when I said it's vital that you place your movements, you place your units well at the start, what's also vital is that you get the first turn.
That's with everybody, though.
But I don't know, especially with Beastmen, because they can minimize that distance between the two armies as soon as possible. And, you know, giving the opponent less turns to shoot is massive.
And a lot of abilities, a lot of people have been saying shooting is overpowered, but we really are just at the base of unlocking a lot of the tactics of this game. And one of the things that I've been finding is that there's a lot of those special abilities are neutralized. Sometimes even in general, you can't shoot if you get close to an enemy. If you can get within 3 inches, which is really the only way it's going to happen, is if you've charged that unit or another unit nearby. And it kind of neuters that unit's special abilities for shooting, maybe getting extra attacks or, you know, or whatnot. And the beast, that's all about what the beasts do. The beastmen do, man. They want to get in your face.
I mean, that was really nice in the last game I played because my opponent had Iron Drakes.
Yep.
And, you know, if you've got a model within 3 inches of them, they can only fire once. But if you don't, they can fire twice, and those things are deadly. They can take out half a unit, no problem.
Yeah, I'm going to be picking up a bunch of those because I'm certainly going to get into dwarves, and I'm saving dwarves. You know who's going to be doing dwarves with me?
Who?
Andy.
He's good. He's got a penchant for the Iron Drakes and the Iron Breakers, and I tell you what, he loves his organ gun.
I am very much in the same camp, man. I love the Iron Drakes more than so the Iron Breakers. They have different utility, but we'll talk about that when we do that unlocking. But yeah, I love the idea of just these heavily armored guys, you know, shooting out gouts of flame. All right, so the War Gore Standard Bearer. Let's take a look at him now. So it seems like this is something that you used a lot from what you just said in previous edition.
Well,
so let's go look at this guy.
Of course, in your previous edition, this guy was vital because Beastmen have low leadership, really low leadership. You're not as bad as goblins, but kind of low, you know. And you could be failing a series of panic tests just from misplacing some harpies or maybe a razor gore that gets shot off or killed. That could set off a little chain reaction, and you could have half your warriors fleeing the battlefield before you've even got into combat. So having a War Gore Standard Bearer gave you a reroll on your leadership, you know, but it also meant this guy was pretty centrally placed. You'd put him in your gores, you know, sometimes you'd put him in a Bestie Gore unit. But it all became very, very predictable, as I mentioned earlier, you know. Yeah. So, you know, you don't have to take this guy anymore because you don't get the rerolls, but what you do, and I'm reading it as every turn you've got these abilities, right? They're not just one-offs.
Right.
You've got the brain war cry, and you can add +1 to the hit rolls made for just the War Gore. But you know, if you're going to do that, you have to actually scream and make funny noises out loud for real.
I've said this on other unlockings. I'm of the mind of two things. I don't think it's appropriate to remove those abilities because of the silliness. If anybody's comping things, don't remove these abilities.
I love them.
Either you people just suck it up and do the silly stuff, or if you just are getting tired of seeing it, which I can't imagine anybody's getting tired of seeing this yet, because let's be realistic. We just all started. We're only a few weeks in with Age of Sigmar. Nobody's getting tired of these weird wacky abilities. But if you really get tired of it, just let the ability stand in and of itself without having to do the song and dance. I like it. I think that maybe it'll come to a point where it gets a little tiring, but we're certainly not there yet. But yeah, this is like this is a nice ability. +1 to all hits. Fantastic. I'm all for it.
You know what, mate? If the rules said you have to strip naked and do a circuit around the gaming table, you know, to get that in the old rules, you'd do it. You know, you really would get any advantage. Good.
I might do it because I'm just, you know, I'm not really ashamed and afraid. But I have a feeling in a kid-friendly environment, I would wind up getting taken away in handcuffs.
So, I mean, it's an okay rule. You know, you've already got 3+ to hit. So this would give you a 2+ to hit. Bearing in mind, you've only got 4 attacks, and it's 3+ to wound with a -1 rend. So maybe you'll get, I don't know, 2 conservatively. You kind of guaranteed to get 2 wounds through on an opponent. So this guy, he's not going to set the world on fire, you know. But his other ability with his standard is the beast standard. It says here, in your hero phase, a wargore can plant his beast standard and unleash the bestial power contained within. If he does so, you may not move the wargore until next hero phase, but you can add 1 to any wound rolls made in the combat phase for all Brayherd models if they're within 16 inch of the standard. That's ace.
That is, you know what? I think that the thing, like with war standards, typically within this game, in even in 8th edition, was, you know, some of them were very killing, but some of them wound up being support type characters that you kind of held back behind the first row, the first line of assault, and you defended them in a unit. You hit them in a unit sometimes. I don't know how this was applied in 8th edition. The way I would use this, I would keep these guys within 16 inches of as many of my units as possible, but as far back as possible, such that I would be as reasonably as possible outside of the range for as much shooting as you could, because you can't protect this guy by sitting him in a unit like you can't protect any hero in Age of Sigmar. You're still able to shoot. Maybe even try to hide him from line of sight so that a lot of shooting can't, you know, depending on what the terrain looks like. You can't put him in a unit unless you want to, you know, kind of like protect him from being charged and deny an area of the board. But maybe hide him in an area behind a hill or in a building, something where he's still able to use these abilities, and then enhance all of your units that have moved up and have gotten into the fray. So that's because he's not that killy, like you said. 4 attacks is good. 3+, -1 damage. He's not that good. But I what he does to the rank and file guys that are going to get into the fight, I think is what you want him for.
I mean, I would rather, if you had a magic spell and you cast the Mystic Shield, I'd rather put it on him rather than on a unit of Gores, because it could give him this ability, you know.
Yeah.
Having said all this, you've got to have these units in combat, and you've got to have as many of them as possible in combat to get this. Hopefully, by the time you've got you guys in combat, you've got a decent amount of them left, 1. And 2, you've got a decent amount of them in, in touching distance to be able to fight. But I'm looking at this ability when you apply it to Bestigors, you know, this +1 to wound, and it would mean that Bestigors have 2+ to wound instead of 3+.
Sweet.
That's amazing. Plus, that you see they've got 2 attacks each as well. So my feeling is that if you can get especially the Bestigors to get to get the breaks from his ability, they're going to be deadly. The Gores only have 4+ to hit and 4+ to wound, so it'd bring them, you know, it'd make them a bit better. But they don't have any rend, you know, so they're not, Gores aren't for me, they're not the meat and potatoes of the army anymore, you know. They're not looking great to me. But this guy, when you stick him near Bestigors, wow.
Yeah, I think when we read the specifics of those units, we'll probably see what those synergies are, because I see what you're saying without a doubt. That 2+ wounding is gonna. I would definitely do that. You know, especially 2 attacks. But yeah, that's awesome. All right, let's see the Great Bray Shaman. Okay, we're gonna pass some of these named characters. We'll try to swing back and get them. Okay. I haven't looked at this. I'm gonna go read through it and see if we can I can figure it out on the fly.
I love Right. Love him.
Infused with bestial vigor. All Beastmen units within from your army that are within 8 inches of the Great Brave Shaman at the start of your unit phase can move an extra 3 inches. Yes, yes. So now you've got a 9-inch move. If you're running, you've got an extra 3 on top of your rolling an extra die 6. That's phenomenal. Now, this is in your movement phase. So it also helps you if you want to retreat, which is a tactic that is way underused. There's so much depth to things like retreating. It doesn't seem to help you with charging, but there's other elements that seem to help you with charging, like with the Beast Lord. Okay, so magic. He knows an extra spell, which is the Dominion spell. He can unbind and attempt to cast 1 spell on each turn. Doesn't look like he has any bonuses. Let me also comment that he's got a 2-inch range with his attacks. Only a 4 up, but he's got a -1 with die 3 wounds. Seems like they've thrown that in there on a lot of the caster types, the wizard, focused heroes, just to give them a little bit of an extra punch. It seems to be very universal. They're a little bit average on hit and wound, but you get a little extra rend and a die 3 instead of 1 damage, so they can do something.
I tell you, Mitch, that is massive because. Say you get you've got your wizard character in a fight with someone, maybe another character or maybe a couple of guys that are left from the unit that you're attacking. You get into combat with them and you cast a spell on them, maybe an arcane bolt, and you whittle them down, and then you've got that D3 damage. If you can get a wound through, you can kill stuff.
Yeah,
you really can.
Yeah, it definitely adds up. It's nice to have that as an extra thing, as opposed to I'm just a caster, I can't do anything in combat.
Now, you talked about this spell, and this spell is my favorite spell in the whole Age of Sigmar game, Savage Dominion. It is the best one. It's got to be the best one. It's hard to roll. You've got to roll a 9 or more on 2 dice. And so what's that, a 1 in 4 chance of it happening?
It's tough.
It's tough, but if you can get it through and the guy doesn't, the guy doesn't unbind it, you can bring on a monster of your choice on the table every turn.
Now, here's my question. If I look at that, it's a keyword monster. It does not say anything specific about faction, about army PDF. It just says monster.
Wow, I didn't even notice that. As soon as I read that, I was thinking Jabberslife, giant.
Well, of course. But could you what's your thoughts? Do you think you could take something that's from another list? Because this game is very keyword specific. And even the factions have keywords that you could see that they're organized across not just Beastmen or Warriors of Chaos, but across multiple armies. If it says chaos and you're organizing by chaos, you can mix and match with the Warriors of Chaos or Demons of Chaos if they have units that also have the keyword chaos. Now, we haven't seen a lot of rules with this, but that it stands to reason that that's how a lot of these things are organized.
I think you're right, because in old rules there was a spell that the Beastmen could get where they could turn their wizard into a monster, and the choice of monster was a chimera, mountain chimera, or a hydra, or a little dragon. So when you're talking monsters, what have I missed out? Maybe you've got a manticore as well. Awesome. So yeah, why not bring on a hydra?
I think you can. I don't see any reason why not.
By doing that, you'll finally have a unit in the Beastman army that can regenerate rules, because that is another factor, a big negating factor in the Beastman. It's so frustrating because now we know monsters lose abilities, lose effectiveness when they get wounds. There's no way of restoring wounds to the Beastmen army. There's no healing spells. There's no regeneration. So, why not bring a Hydra on? Why not? The marshes of the forest have some weird Hydras living in them. Why not?
Now, it has to be within 6 inches of the edge of the battlefield and more than 9 inches from an enemy model. So you don't have the full range that a lot of summons have, because you still have to. These are guys are still coming in from the outer edge, but it's not a summoning from within where your shaman is. So you can technically summon it on the other side of the table, as long as it's within 6 inches. Let's say there's a war machine on the other corner of the table, on that side of the table, as long as you're not within 9 inches of that, it could be halfway across. It could be 3 feet, 4 feet across the table.
That's game changing. I mean, what if you had a scenario where you had to capture certain objectives? You could trick your opponent by putting all your units on the other side of the table, and they're like, what's he doing? So they commit troops to you, and then suddenly you plant this monster down near where the objective is. Boom. You've given them something massive to think about.
Yeah.
And the other amazing thing about this spell, when you compare it to the old edition, is that it doesn't affect the caster. Before, when you did this spell, any wounds that it got affected the caster.
Wow. Okay. In what way? How did it affect the caster?
You the monster, you were the caster.
Oh, you had to be the caster. You turned you into the creature, rather.
There was two. One of them. There's two spells. I have to get my Beastmen cards to look at them. One of them was in the Lore of Beasts itself.
Wait, those exist?
Yeah, yeah. No one talks about them because they were the worst. It was the worst magic lore. That and the Wood Elves had the worst magic lore. I mean, it's called the Lore of the Wild.
Yeah.
And all the spells were rubbish, apart from the one where you could summon a monster. But the downside was every wound that the monster took, it goes on the caster.
Oh God, yeah. That's
the casters only had 2 or 3 wounds. So it sucked. Yeah, and the other spell was Savage Dominion that comes in the Lore of the Beasts, which was kind of the most popular spell lore that Beastmen took, because you've got it gives all these extra bonuses to beasts. It helps you cast spells if you're a Beastman army as well. So what I love about this spell, that although the shaman is controlling the monster, once he's on the battlefield, he can kind of let him roam free and do his own thing.
Yeah, it's a tough casting cost with a 9. You know what you need to do when you roll up your terrain. You've got to know where the terrain pieces are that give you that +1, and you've got to be mindful of how far are you away from enemy casters so they can't unbind you. So those types of things can help dramatically. I don't know if there's any other abilities within the army, we're going to find out, that can help you with that casting cost. A 9 is very serious. I know a lot of people have talked about things like summoning being overpowered, but in many cases, being able to bring to bear something this powerful is not easy. It's not a gimme. And beyond the fact that they could be, unbound. But if you can get, and this is one of the reasons also why I don't like the 0-2 heroes limitation I hear with some comps. There's a reason for having multiple heroes in this game beyond the fact that they're very easy to be killed off, shot up, not just from magic, but especially from shooting, from war machines and such, just for character assassination. This game, just like they did in End Times, is going to see an abundance of monsters and characters. And it's not going to overshadow the battlefield with just monsters and characters. But you want to be able to have a healthy amount, because these creatures are going to drop. And it's just going to be more interesting in that regard. You're going to have rank and file troops and whatnot. But the idea is you want to have at least a couple of these guys that can cast, so that if one fails, maybe you've got a second shot. But at the very least, if one gets killed, you've got a backup. So if there's other casters in this army, I'm hoping that Bray Shaman isn't the only one, but you want to back them up with a secondary caster, if not a Bray Shaman, whatever else can cast.
I love this guy. There's only one other option, and we'll go. If we're looking at characters, we'll look at that, and he can get abilities. But they've done it really well, because if you think you're going to have maybe 4 turns on an average game of Age of Sigmar, there's a 1 in 4 chance. So maybe you could summon, law of averages would tell you could summon 1 monster per game, right?
Yeah. You're probably only going to get the 1.
Yeah. And what monster would you bring on?
Having that creativity kind of opens things up. I mean, a lot of people, the first thing they're going to say is, I want a dragon. I look at, first of all, what do you have in your army? What do you own? Because you got to have the right thing. I'm not a big person when it comes to proxy.
No.
I don't mind a model that is not official from the line, but obviously is a good representation of what that's supposed to be. It's the appropriate size. It kind of gives you an image, or maybe you have a theme army that you're converting, because I'm a converting nut. But you have to have an appropriate model of some kind. All right, it's got to be something comparable in size and at least fit in your theme with your army. But I like the idea of, I mean, what do I have? I have a dragon. I'm just waiting to build just so I can have it in some capacity for some of the other armies that I'm building or that I have kind of on deck. But I have, I have a Terrorgeist. I have a zombie dragon. I now have with my son's army a giant or a Thunder Tusk. I think that a giant is also doable in this army. So yeah, you could do a giant, but I'm going to have the model. So great. Okay. Thunder Tusk would be phenomenal. A Stonehorn. Think about first of all, the Thunder Tusk with the ability to shoot that amazing 6 mortal wounds within 18 inches.
Yeah, but would it come with the Ogre Riders?
It comes with, say again?
Would it come with the Hunters on top?
Oh yeah. It's considered, the model's considered a monster. So it's just, it's technically considered a monster. So yeah, it would have whatever's on the War Scroll.
Wow.
But either way, it would be something. It'd have to be something big. I would want to see you find something with the biggest, wound count, and if there's another situational thing in there, like something that can shoot. I think the first thing anybody would think of would be a monster. But you also can't discount the fact, and we're going to go through them, that there's monsters in the Beastmen army that are worthy of putting on the table now. So we'll go through those without going through the abilities, though. If you had to pick one out of any of these. Either a different army that has monsters or this army itself, which one would you pick?
Oh man, I love the monsters in this War Scrolls, in the Beastmen War Scrolls. So I'd probably have them in my army anyway on the table already. So I would be choosing something from outside the Beastmen, and I'm just thinking an Arachnorak Spider would be a lot of fun. Yeah. And it goes with the fluff as well because you've got forest goblins on top of them, and the Beastmen live in the forest. So I love the ogres, but I don't know how I would fit that up in my own head, bringing a Thunder Tusk on, through the forest. But something, I might even stretch to a Terrorgeist, because you can imagine one of these Terrorgeists maybe just roaming on his own around the forest, maybe at a stretch. But yeah, Arachnorak or a Hydra for me.
Oh, Hydra is a great idea. I agree with you on the regeneration, but I think in terms of fluff, I think in terms of what would fit and wouldn't be a little bit too silly. I don't envision the Gore calling up that necromantic energy to get a Terrorgeist or a zombie dragon. I see where you're going, but an Arachnorak Spider would not be out of the realm of it would work. It would fit. It would be nice.
Oh,
yeah, I like that. Okay.
I mean, you can convert it and put some Ungors on top of it instead of goblins.
Oh, you see that, and then you're getting extra credit.
Yeah.
All right, Gores. All right, you got it. Take it away for Gores.
Oh, well, now Gores were kind of they were amazing in numbers in the last edition, and you've got to say they're only going to be effective in numbers again. 10 of these guys useless, really useless. 20 of them, now we're talking something. Because if you do have 20, they get some extra abilities. And you'll see that with the Ungors as well. The choice before was hand weapon and shield or 2 hand weapons, and everyone went with 2 hand weapons because it gave you an extra attack. And before, when bases mattered, Gores were on, I think, 25mm bases, so you needed as many to be able to attack as anything. These guys have got 4+ to hit, 4+ to wound, so that's kind of Yeah. But if they're wielding 2 weapons it says here in their Rend and Tear special ability, you can re-roll hits of 1 if they do have that. So it kind of gives them a 3+ to hit ish. If they got the shields, then they have a 4+ save. That's pretty good. They come naturally with a 5+ save, which is a massive improvement, because before they didn't have any save if they wielded 2 hand weapons. Didn't have any save whatsoever. So Gores would be going down in huge numbers, and the only thing that kind of protected them was having toughness 4. And obviously people took Law of Beasts because of the main spell in the Beast, the Law of Beasts spells. It escapes me now, but it gives you, I think can give you +1 toughness or something like that. So if you can get it off, Gores could suddenly become really, really good. But I'm looking at this now. They kind of look average. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, there's some bonuses, there's some benefits here, and there's some deficiencies that seem to be kind of pushed further because of the way some people are trying to comp, which I think that's going to evolve and change over time too, because we're going to see that, you know, maybe you're neutering some of these units, and I'll go over that in just a second. But the first thing I notice here is that, you know, the command units have unique abilities that sometimes have a theme across these army PDFs, and here it looks like that the musician allows you to run in charge. Not a small deal. You're going to get that extra movement. Maybe you're going to get an extra 3 from the extra ability prior. So you'll be moving at 6 base. Then you can also get that extra 3 for 9. Then maybe you ran, because if you have a Brayhorn, you can run in charge. And you're not going to worry about shooting because you don't have anything to shoot with. So you're going to get that extra die 6. You're going to get you're going to get between 9 and 15 inches on your move, which is no big deal. I know, no little deal. That's a big deal. Then you can charge. And your charges, I think if I remember correctly, you already had something that might have given you a +1 on your charge. Yeah. So that might add another 1 to that. And then you have your 2 to 12 on your charge range, which you don't have to declare on a specific unit. You just decide on whatever was within range. Maybe you can actually get, and there's a pretty good chance, get across the battlefield, that 24-inch marker, and get into combat on the very first turn. Even if you lost the first turn and your opponent moved up, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get into the fight turn 1. I like that.
And I think because of that, I think people will be glad they can shoot into combat now, you know? But absolutely, if you just take the average of those rolls, you know, if you're running, I think, do you add a D6?
When you run, you add a D6.
So let's say your average is, let's be conservative, let's say 3. So your movement can be 9 there, and then you charge with a 2D6. Let's say the average is 7. So that's a 15-inch on average, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That's more than a lot of flying units.
That most flying units, they're 12 or 14. You have some that maybe are 16, and you still can charge. That's awesome. I think, and I want to speak really quickly. I've mentioned this in some other Army videos about the thing about the 20 or more units, and sometimes it takes away from you when people try to comp with limits on wounds. Wounds are not equal, as we all have already said many a time. A wound is not equal across units and across armies. In the same way as some units points-wise weren't in 8th edition and prior editions of Warhammer. If you're an organizer, or if you just want to try and, you know, have a comp with your local group, don't do it by wounds. The wounds is probably the worst way to go. It might be a component that you insert, but it should be one of the last components. The way I've been looking at is doing it based on the war scroll. You have a maximum of war scrolls. Maybe you have a maximum number of war scrolls you can apply in your army towards, like, monsters. Like half of, no more than half or a third of your war scrolls can be monsters. No more than a half or a third can be heroes. That's a real serious comp. I don't even like that. But if you're going to do that, at least it gives you flexibility. But here's a real key one. I don't like the idea of maximum of just maximum wounds on a war scroll, because some of these units really open up where they need that extra ability when they get 20 or more or 30 or more in their unit. So the way I've been suggesting to people is provide a mechanic. If you have X amount of war scrolls that you're bringing to the table, that you can combine 2 war scrolls to get a larger unit. For example, if you have a 20 or 25 maximum on your war scrolls, your first war scroll for a unit, you can get that 20 or 25 maximum wounds. And if you add another war scroll on top of it to open up the extra ability, you have to eat another war scroll allotment. Maybe you only get, instead of 20 extra wounds, it's 15. So say 2 war scrolls can get you 40 guys here, which is a 40 wound max. But you know, you now have opened up maybe 1 or 2 tiers of these extra attacks or to hit or whatnot. I see that with zombies, with skeletons, with Skaven units, where they just really come to their own with the horde mentality.
Personally, I have no problem with them having loads of wounds in a war scroll. But when you've seen these ideas for comps, how many wounds have they been able to allot to, say, Gauls? You know,
the way I've seen most people doing it, they don't allow you to make a choice on capping a unit or rather going beyond the cap of the unit.
What's the cap?
20 or 25. I
that,
don't see anybody putting in 30, which is where a lot of these abilities open. But
yeah.
the problem I have is that every single war scroll is capped at that wound count, and a lot of units can never get, or as soon as they take a wound, they've lost that extra ability because they've capped it at 20.
That sucks. You know, it should be for Gauls, maybe, come on, 20? It's no good. You know, bear in mind, if they don't get the first turn, they're gonna get whittled down. Guaranteed. They're gonna lose at least one wound.
Right.
From shooting or spells. So then they've lost that ability before they've even got into battle. So you'd have to say 30 wounds cap.
I believe 30 wounds, and if you want to add another war scroll, you get another 10 or 15 or something along those lines.
That sounds fair.
I like the idea of being able to take 2 war scroll selections and get a bigger unit, but you have had to make a sacrifice.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But that's if you like comp, because there's a lot of people still talking comp and organized and events, and I think they just still have that in their mind. I still think that this game doesn't need comp. There are some things that maybe need to kind of be that social agreement. You don't have to have it on paper. But if you need to put something in there, don't go so restrictive. I still see it. 0 to 2 heroes. That sucks. I wanted them to do a video on this. 0 to 2 monsters. That sucks too. Some armies are better and are built around that. And then the wound cap. There's only going to be the elite armies that are going to be functioning in that environment. You can't.
You know what I mean? It's the people. A lot of the people that have been poo-pooing this game are people that, whose armies have been a little bit nerfed, that were overpowered before. You won't find one Beastman player who's poo-pooing these Age of Sigmar rules. They are loving it because finally the Beastmen can field a decent army that's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, if a rule sucks, don't use it. I mean, and if it's saying 20 wound maximum, that sucks. That's going straight.
I don't like that.
But let's look into this, because some of these 20+ model rules can be a little complicated, and I bet they can be quite easy to forget. When in the throes of a game. But this one in particular for the Gauls, you basically have to roll a dice if you've got more than 20 models, right? And if you get a 4 or more, you can add 1 to all wound rolls for the unit in that combat phase. And if you roll a 6, they can make an extra attack. So that's ace. If you can get that magic 6, it's really nice. Plus,
do those stack?
If you've got a Bray Herd hero nearby within 8 inch, you +1 to that roll. So then it's a 3 on a 3 or more. They get +1 to wound. So then if you can re-roll 1s on the hit, and you may be able to get a 3+ wound. So suddenly they're becoming kind of cool.
That is complicated. I haven't seen it be that complicated on those types of rules. I'm a little surprised because most of these things are very streamlined. Do you think those stack? Is it one or the other? In other words, you roll your dice when they pile in. You add up the modifiers if there are any for the Bray Herd hero. Some of them will get extra pluses to wound. Some of them will get extra attacks. Are there scenarios where those stack on top of each other?
It doesn't say that here. I mean, because it says for that combat phase, for that one. But for the rend and tear, you can reroll hits of 1. Because
it says the result is 4 or more, you can add +1 to all wounds for the rest of the combat phase. If the result is 6 plus more, all models in the unit make 1 extra attack. So you're only rolling that once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think that, I don't know. I don't know about that one. We'll have to see if we can get
it. It's not guaranteed, though, Mitch. And what was great about the Gauls before was they were guaranteed 2 attacks with a possibility of getting 3 attacks. If you did that, if you rolled, I think if you rolled double 1s on Primal Fury, that was kind of cool. But
I think it stacks.
Right.
I think if you just get a 4 or more, you just get the extra wound. If you happen to roll a 6 or more, you get both of these because you've also rolled higher than a 4. So I think you get
because at the end of the sentence it says as with their gore blades as well. Yeah, come on, give them some love here. They've got a stack.
I mean, look, if the rules lawyers want to try and reduce this, they're obviously not Beastman players. All right, best of gores. Let's move on.
All right.
Best of gores. Okay, only one wound on these guys. Let's see. Gores were also one wound.
Now the
Two
gores,
attacks.
I'm glad we stayed on the gores for some time, because most people that have got Beastmen armies will have gores, because you almost had to.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I was fielding a brand new Beastman army that I had to compose, I don't know if I'd pick gores at all.
Really?
No.
Well, a lot of people that are going to get into Beastmen from with their legacy armies, they're probably going to, like you said, put the gores on the table. I don't think that they're a do not include, but I have to agree that they don't look overly dramatically great. I don't think they're fantastic. Oh my God, I would want to put these on the table. But if you got the models, test them out, see how they work. There's definitely a use for them to have a large look. If I see a horde of 40 of these guys on the other side of the table, I have got to deploy something to address that. And these guys can definitely, kick some butt. If they have all those pluses maxed out, you can't ignore it. You cannot ignore these guys.
I think what they can do is just hold something up for a bit, but I don't think they can take much out unless it's like a war machine or a small unit.
They're meant to be a lot of models to get these bonuses. That's the only way they're really going to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
So they're going to be a scary mob. You know what else they can do? And this is one of the other things that I think is good for these single wound units that really kind of push you to have lots of them. Same thing with like Skaven and Undead. They really can control board area.
Mm-hmm.
That 3-inch threat area for movement restriction is going to be a major deal if you take 30 or 40 of the gores.
Yeah, nice with their big movements as well.
Absolutely,
kind of cool. It could be a bit lumbering though if you've got like 50 of these guys in a unit.
Oh, I want to see that.
All right.
Best of gores. Your best gores.
Best gores.
Extra attacks. Go ahead. You go through it.
Well, I fielded 10 of these guys in my last battle, and 3 of them got shot down by magic and shooting. And then another 2 got shot down. And by the time I made it into combat, I had like 4 of them left. And I think they got 1 wound on these dwarves. So, again, 10 of these guys, it's not enough. It's not enough. But you're hoping that there's a lot of threats on the table with the Beastmen army. And people are going to concentrate their fire on the monsters, on maybe the big unit of gores you have, or maybe even the characters. Hopefully they'll forget about the bestie gores, because these are much better in combat, much better. They've got this 4 to hit and +3 to wound, and you can make that into a +2 to wound if you use that Wargore Standard Bearer, right? If you use his special ability. And the best thing about these guys now is 2 attacks. They never had that before.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And the rend, that rend adds up.
Rend, they've got a -1 rend, 2 attacks. They can run and charge in the same turn if they've got a Brayhorn. And if you've got a totem or a standard bearer, let's say, you can add 1 to the hit roll made for the Bestigor if he is attacking a model carrying a totem or a unit that includes any standard bearers.
Which is most.
Yeah. So that means it's now a 3+ to hit and 3+ to wound.
That's very respectable. I was looking at that initially with just the 4+, but most of the rank and file, the non-character, non-monster units are going to have a totem. They might even have many totems.
Mm-hmm. I would say 5 is too few. 10 is also too few. A minimum 15 for me. All
right, that sounds good. Chariots. First of all, chariots just seem like they've gotten a huge boost in this game in general. So let's see, 6 wounds, 10 movement. We haven't really commented about the bravery being a 6 with these guys. You're going to be taking battle shock tests, and you're going to be losing models. The key is just to force your opponent to lose more.
Quick, Mitch, about the back to the gores is the battle shock. It will affect your gores.
Anything really with a 6 bravery. And you're only 1 wound with not a great save. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now the big thing about chariots, before you couldn't, there was a big restriction on movement with chariots, wasn't there? You couldn't What was it? It couldn't do. You could only charge or move.
Right. You couldn't double your movement for a march.
Yeah, that's it. You couldn't march. But it doesn't look like that's appropriate. That's applicable now, right?
No, it's you have your 10-inch move, which is beyond the 8 that was limited to most chariots, and you don't have any issues if you want to run, you can run with
Oh
your
yeah.
chariot.
So uh, let's say you move 10, or like you run, and you roll a 3 for the run. That's 13 move, and then you roll an average of 7 on the charge.
Yeah.
That's a lot of movement. I don't know if you can run and charge in the same turn with this though.
I don't. It doesn't say anything that you can, so I don't believe you can. So let's see. I know that it says it has some special rule for a charge. You can re-roll charge rolls, and in addition, you can re-roll all failed hit rolls made if you charged. That's awesome. That's fantastic. So yeah, you're gonna have maybe up to what? So you said it was like a 13.
Well, it's going to be 17. If you don't run, if you just move, and you move your 10, and then you roll to charge,
right?
That's 17-inch.
That's
17-inch range of attacking, I suppose you could say.
You could definitely get in there. It's probably going to be a second turn get into combat, or if your opponent's moved up, and they're silly enough to get within that threat range.
Yep, it's got more wounds now than before.
6 wounds a pop. You can take more. You can take a bunch of them. You take 3 or 4 of these.
It's got a better saving throw, I believe, as well.
4 up.
It has more attacks now with four attacks, 2 for the Great Axe Bestigor guy, and then another attack for the crew member. So that's nice because before it was just D6, wasn't it? It was D6 wounds or something. It's like automatic hits with a D6 wounds.
Yeah, I think the real key here is that you've got it doesn't look like you're getting any real more wounds than most chariots I'm seeing. The hit wound rolls, wound rolls of 3 up is nice, but the hit rolls are average, 4s and 5s, but you get to re-roll it's to hits if you charged. So that's key. You want to make sure that you stay out of the threat range to be charged so that you can get a follow-up charge maybe in your secondary turn.
So Mitch, where it says you can re-roll hit rolls, is that for the chariot and the crew and everyone?
All.
Right.
Unless they specifically say for this element of the unit, this part of the unit, but here it says specifically, in addition, you can re-roll all failed hit rolls made for a Tuskor chariot if the unit charged this turn. So if it's unit charged this turn. So I'd say it's everything. It's a component of the charge. The rider, the crew, as well as the mount that's pulling the chariot itself. They're all going to get this benefit. If I don't see a distinguishing factor that says just the Tuskors get this or just the crew get this, then it's got to be everything. And in this case, it says all failed to hits. I'm just quickly doing little calculations in my head on averages and seeing that altogether you've got 7 attacks that the Tuskor chariot is dishing out. 7 attacks. You got some re-rolls there. I think, on average, maybe you could get 3 wounds out of that. Oh, yeah. It's unfortunate that it's only 1 wound. We don't see that impact hit thing like a component. Only the Great Axe has a -1 rend. So you're certainly going to bounce off a lot of these actual wounding attacks, ones that actual wound off of a good armor save. But I think you're going to sneak through a good two of these, maybe 3, because you're going to re-roll those. It's only a 4 up to hit and a 5 up. You're gonna miss some, but then you're gonna re-roll them and get a couple extras. So yes.
So let's say 3 wounds. Now before it was D6 wounds, so your average there would be 3 or 4. So it's kind of like the same as before in a way.
Yeah, I think it depends on the unit you're up against. If you're up against something soft, single wound, low armor, I think they're going to roll in and they're going to do a whole lot of damage.
I think you're right, and the big difference is before it was if you charged, you got those D6 impact wounds, and then suddenly the chariot is kind of a bit redundant.
Yeah.
But now that's a bit different because it seems they might be able to last more than 1 or 2 turns. With the 6 wounds as well.
Yeah, I especially if you have like 3 or 4 of these in a unit.
Wow. I mean, obviously, before the Tuscarora Chariot was a core choice, so there were some people that fielded, you know, a massive chariot kind of themed army with the Beastmen.
Yeah, break those out into multiple units then. If you've got a Tuscarora Chariot army, you want to cover more battlefield because as was pointed out to me when we did the Orc and Goblin discussion. Tom had mentioned that, you know, he went up against a very chariot heavy army, and they kind of get bogged down because they are bigger models.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like having a whole bunch of large bases. You're gonna have some issues trying to get them all in there. You get a couple in, but then the rest are just going to be sitting behind, and those are going to be the ones you're going to remove, but they're not going to get a chance to actually hit in the first turn because you can't get to fit them all in.
I mean, Mitch, what's a comparable figure that's got around 6 wounds? You know, it wouldn't be a monster. You'd say it would be a hero, right? A character. What would you rather have? Would you rather have a Tuscarora Chariot or a character?
I don't think I'll have any issue with saying a Tuscarora Chariot. The reason why is you get a lot of attacks, and you've got typically, unless you're riding something, a lot of times the heroes have more wounds because they're riding a monster. But a hero is usually 5, in some cases 6 wounds, and they won't always have that extra move. This is a fast-moving unit with a solid 6 wounds, a respectable 4-up save, and you've got 7 attacks.
Plus, you don't have to worry about bravery, right? Because you're one single unit.
Not only, yes, that's absolutely true. Plus, you're not going to get sniped like a character typically will, because you're probably going to group this one up with a bunch of other friends. Now, that's going to be a lot more wounds, of course, than just a regular hero. But still, losing one of these, comparable to a hero, I think it depends on the hero. But I don't mind. I mean, I think obviously a lot of Beastmen are going to have these chariots, and I don't see why they should now in Age of Sigmar.
I mean, chariots are now so much more freed up with the way movement works and the way piling in has changed things.
Yeah.
So, you can really see chariots now not worrying about the angles so much and being able to support a unit that's already in combat, by getting into the flanks.
Yep. I think that this, I would definitely take a unit of these guys. And if you have a whole bunch, take 2. Put them on either sides of the table. Don't scrum just in the middle. And I cannot say enough about scenarios. Play scenarios, people. Scenarios is what make this game work. All right, so Ungors. All right.
I love these guys. I love them even when they were rubbish, I don't know. They're kind of so pathetic before. Typically before you take Ungors with a hand weapon and shield, or maybe a spear and shield, and they'd kind of maybe be a bunker, or it'd definitely be cannon fodder, that's for sure. I mean, the only success I ever had with them in the past was holding them back while everything else charged. So what happened was my opponent, who had a shooty high elf army, ended up, trying to shoot my Minotaurs, trying to shoot my Doomball, shooting the Bestigors, and they kind of forgot about the Ungors. So, if you could manage a long bomb charge before, maybe the Ungors could, support something. And of course, if you roll for Primal Fury, you could re-roll to hit. So they did have a function, but it was a kind of I don't know. It was very situational, let's say. But now, you've got a choice between Ungors or the Ungor Raiders. I don't know. Ungor Raiders are just brilliant for me.
Yeah, we'll get to the Ungor Raiders. Did you use this in your game with Andy, the Ungors themselves?
I've got 30 Ungors, and I've modeled them so 10 of them have hand weapon and shield, 10 of them have spear and shield, 10 of them have bows and shields, bows. So I could kind of like get away with choosing any of those and just putting them on the front rank, Would I take some now? I mean, I've got the models. Let's see what they do. You can run and charge. Same movement as Gores, so you've got that 6 movement. Look at their bravery, though.
Yeah, the bravery and the save are a big problem. I mean, you need to take the half shield so that you have the 5-up save. But even then, that's minor.
Yeah.
This is the way I see using them. I think the best way to use these guys is with the spears, because you have a row of, say, Gore or Bestigor. you have these guys run up in a row behind them, just a regular straight row or whatever formation you want, and they get that extra 2-inch spear shot because they can't take the hits. They're not going to survive. They're going to take a tremendous amount of battle shock because they have a really low bravery, but they can get that little stabbiness in between units with that 2-inch range. And you put those guys behind there, and who is your opponent going to focus on? What's in their face, not what's in the second rank. And if they're going to waste time going after the Ungors, good, do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, these guys, anything can wound anything now.
Yep.
And they've got 4 up to hit, 4 up to wound. That's the same as the Gors. Obviously they don't get any range. You get that 2-inch range with the spear. But it's harder to hit. You see, if you've got the spears, it's now 5 up to hit. So that's.
But it's that bonus that you're coming from that 2-inch range is what makes it worthwhile.
Sure.
But still, the reason why, if you take enough of them, you have your 30 Ungor, you're going to get re-rolls of 1s and 2s. So that will help you with that 5 up. Yeah,
that's very nice. Going back to just the Ungor Maul, it's just basically a hand weapon. If you've got them, you've got 4 up to hit, and if you've got 30 of these guys re-rolling 1s and 2s, that's almost like an auto hit, isn't it? It's 5 out of 6 chance to hit, maybe. So maybe you could dish out some wounds against an enemy monster with these guys.
Yeah, there's definitely some utility for them. They're going to be screeners, or they're going to be bonus attacks that people are just not going to pay attention to, and they're to their dismay. I want to point out something that you mentioned that really was absolutely fantastic comment. Anything can wound anything in this game. And I know some people have an issue with that because they probably have those models with the toughness 8 or 10 or whatever. And, those things trotted along the battlefield and just laid waste to everything and almost won the game for you.
Oh,
that's not the Sigmar.
Yeah, man. Let's look at the steam tank.
Right.
I remember one game I put some Ungor Raiders in front of the steam tank just to hold it up. And there's no chance them guys could ever do anything to it back then. It was like, a 6, you need to roll to 6 to wound, and it had like loads. It had like 10 wounds or something like that. It was so annoying. And now you can imagine these Ungors would just sort of swarm over something like a tank and go inside the buttress, try and open the door. You know what I mean? Even mind try and go under the wheels and try and hold it up. Anything. So it's good that anything can wound anything. It's much more fun. It means that the crappiest character can do something heroic.
Everything is appropriate to field. It's nothing wasted. They have a role. They can contribute. They're not a wasted deployment. And your best stuff, if you lose it, you expect you're going to lose some of that stuff. You're not going to be sad. And why is that? Because maybe it's not the only one on the battlefield that you put there as opposed to the previous editions. You might have 3 or 4 big things. If you lose one, oh, well, that's not – okay, sorry, that it stinks, but it's part of the game. Now you're not – it doesn't crush your entire army because you were hinging on that. I watched a video recently. And I forget, I think it was one of the larger channels that kind of does this for as their job, and they put out really good content. But there's one, I think it's Mini Wargaming, and they just still haven't found their way with this game yet. They're still figuring it out. They're kind of fumbling a little bit through it, which is unfortunate. But they're trying, man. They're really giving it the real good try, which I like. They had one game where I think it was like 15 or 20 clan rats took down a bloodthirster.
Yeah, man.
Was that ever possible?
No.
I thought that was great. I just got this vision of this like this mob of fur, this creature of fire and this demonic monstrosity going across the battlefield, laying waste to everything it walked across, and then this herd of fur just kind of engulfed it and eventually whittled it down where all you saw was maybe a little wing and the tip of its axe. That was the end of the friggin' bloodthirster. I thought that was epic. Really good indication of how this game can turn, where you just can't take for granted even weak units like these Ungors. They are going to do damage.
Absolutely, but Mitch, let me tell you this: if I was having a game against you, and I guess you'll be playing your undead, maybe an army that's a bit more shooty, like dwarves, right? And I had my Gors out there. I had a Jabberslythe, and I had some Bestigors. And then, I had like 30 Ungors just, there trying to look hard. Now, which ones are you going to aim for? You're not going to worry about the Ungors, are you?
I probably not. It depends on where you place them and if there's a scenario objective involved. Because I would place, but yeah, I have to agree. They're going to be low on that that target acquisition order. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, they're the underdogs, and you can use that in your favor. And like I said, personally, I found them best when you're using them as a kind of a scavenge unit. If you're following up where other units are already in combat, you get these guys in to finish it off. You get these guys in on the war machines. You get these guys in on the character. Why not? These guys could maybe take out a character.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. Oh, 20 or 30 of these guys will ruin a character. It's just, I mean, look, you're not going to have outrageous armor saves. You're going to fail. The best armor saves are 4s or 3s, basically. You just don't see it unless you Mystic Shield. You just don't see, and 3s are kind of are not, they're not unheard of, but they're rare. It's usually a 4-up save, and in a lot of cases a 5-up save. I think a unit of 30 Ungors could take out a monster. If it, I mean, it'll go in and it'll take damage. It'll take tremendous damage. But if it doesn't destroy a monster, which is typically 12 or 14 wounds, they don't always have very good armor saves. Some of them do, but not always. If they don't kill that dragon or that monster, they're gonna severely wound it where it goes down very low in its effectiveness because of the way monsters diminish. There is absolutely a reason for taking these guys. Yeah, that's why. Just as long as the comp doesn't screw them, I agree.
Personally, Mitch, I wouldn't like them to face a monster that's on full wounds. I really wouldn't, because they're gonna suffer from their bravery checks.
Absolutely.
So maybe, like I said, finishing off wounded monsters, they're brilliant for that. And with the large movement, they can get in.
All right, Ungor Raiders. You seem like you really like these guys. Let's hear it.
I love these guys so much. Talking of underdogs, all the armies out there that have terrific shooting abilities. The Ungor Raider was probably the worst missile firing unit in the whole history of this game. Before it had a poor bow skill, and it only had like a very short range as well. And you'd only really ever field like 5 or 10 of these guys at once. And you might get them because in the old rules you had this raiding ability, so they could appear from the enemy side of the table, and your enemy would never even bat an eyelid. They'd never be quaking at the possibility of Ungor Raiders coming on. It was like, yeah, so what? Let's get on with the battle, right? I mean, I remember one battle I had against Andy's dwarves, right? He had this really annoying organ gun. Okay, and he had all these runes and everything, and it was just decimating my units. Just polished off a whole unit of like 6 Minotaurs, no problem, right? And he also had this engineer with this unit, and so I sneakily brought on like 10 Ungor Raiders to try and do something to it, and this one engineer killed all of them and didn't even take a wound. The best success I had with them in the old rules was they managed to kill a Vargeist. And that was just because I rolled a lot of 6s by chance.
Not bad.
Apart from that, they were completely insignificant in the old rules. Having said that, they were beautiful models. The new Ungor Raider models, they're really lovely. But now in Age of Sigmar, they are something to behold, and they can kill stuff. And they can do damage, and they can surprise an enemy, and they suddenly auto include for me.
Well, that 18-inch, you need some shooting. It's nice to have some shooting in an army that's mostly built for hand-to-hand and charging in. This keeps you honest. This keeps your opponent honest. You target their high-profile, high-value targets, the characters, their enhancers, the guys that are boosting up the enemy. Go after maybe some war machines, whittle them down, or just that extra attack, shooting into a combat to try and do the extra edge to finish off maybe a monster. I can't imagine if this is like one of your few shooting army units that you wouldn't take them. Take at least a unit of them.
Oh yeah, this is a lovely unit. I took the last game I played with these guys. They halved a unit of dwarves. 10 they killed 5 of them. They took out a war machine. They took out an organ gun, just killed all of its crew. That was lovely. But when you've got these bonuses to having more models, you know, my little criticism from me is rather than saying re-roll 1s and 2s, why doesn't it just say +1 to wound, or +2 to hit? You know.
Well, because I think that the percentages reset, so you it's not as much of a boost with a reroll as just getting a base +1. Or maybe maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the odds are better with getting a reroll versus just getting the extra plus, because you get another chance. Maybe some of the Math Hammer people can weigh in with us with comments.
I just say that because it's a little confusing, isn't it? It's a bit of a, you know, you got all these extra things to remember. But, you know, the actual game mechanics itself is so easy to pick up. You know, it's not up to us to learn.
Use tokens. I've been talking to, I know of one company that's making tokens for Age of Sigmar, but there's so many to make. And I'm talking with one that's getting me samples. I like using tokens. You know, tokens for pluses. That way you don't have to remember as many things. The biggest thing I like to use tokens for, what are the terrain features? Because you don't have to remember them throughout the game. You forget unless you leave die there, and then you have to go look it up. A token to signify what that is. But the other thing is, I think that's almost beyond wounds. Everybody has wound tokens or uses a die. I think the one that I like the most is a token that signifies who has already attacked in combat, because you know they've already piled in and they've done their attack, and that at a glance tells you that unit, you've already done that unit, and you start by process of elimination, seeing the battlefield, what's left. And you don't make the mistake of wondering, did those guys attack yet again? Or maybe doing it again a second time by accident. So those.
Yeah. I'm just, if you give me a minute, I'm just here getting a link up to a company that's producing these already in England. And they're beautiful looking little counters.
Yeah, send me that link, and we'll put it in the notes once this thing goes live.
Okay, man.
I know that Litgo just put out a group of them. I reached out to them and said, "Hey, if you got any samples, send them my way. I'll put them on my channel." But there's a guy who, Unleashed Laser Cutting, I think it's called. I forget. I have to go see. He's actually sent me some samples.
I'm just looking at Litco as well. I think it might be the same one. I saw these like wooden looking ones that look like miniature scrolls. Maybe the same as what you've seen.
Yeah, they don't have. They could be wood, as long as they're not cheesy looking. As long as they're meant for what they are. I mean, wood look like laser cut MDF or something like that. That works for me. Hey, let's move on to Doom Bulls, because I think we still have a lot left. I don't know how much time we have left.
Okay.
All right, Doom Bull. Yeah, there we go. Let's get to the big boys.
So this guy's got movement 7. You know, he's got massive wounds of 8. He's got a 5+ save and bravery 7. Each time you roll a wound of 6 or more, the Doom Bull's attack, you basically make an extra attack. So that's like having the kind of that helmet magic weapon from the last edition, where you can you get an extra attack, right? Is it the ram horn helm or something like that? So that's great. You get extra weapon, allows a Doom Bull to brutally hack through even more foes. A Doom Bull equipped with a pair of Doom Bull axes makes 5 attacks instead of 4. So his base attack is only 4, and that's where it's not as good as the last edition, you know, because you could stack up his attack so much.
How many wounds did the last edition have?
Was it 5 or 6? Something like that.
Yeah, I got to say that the one thing that I think is a downside to this is that this is a single model. It's not a unit, and it's only got 8 wounds. So I'm kind of surprised for a single model monster, and this is not considered a monster. It doesn't have the monster keyword, so maybe that's a nice positive. Yeah. But you're limited per war scroll to have 1. So 8's pretty low in terms of that. You know, they dish out a lot of damage.
Yeah, that's the thing that balances it. You know, although they have less potential attacks than before, now your basic Doom Bull axe gives you 2 wounds of damage with a -1 rend. So, you know, 4 attacks, maybe you're getting 2 wounds through on average, but that really is 4 wounds with a -1 rend. Let's say they save one of those, you know, you're getting 3 mortalish wounds. I don't know, you know, there's no stomp anymore.
Yeah.
So
I got to think that these would be decoys. You know, ignore it to your peril, but it's just strong enough to be scary, fast enough that it can get into combat pretty quickly, but it's weak enough that people will look to other targets in many cases before the Doom Bull, and that could be one of its charms.
Yeah, I mean, let's give the Doom Bull a great axe. Okay, you get 3 attacks, and let's say you roll really well. You got a 3+ to hit, and you got a 3+ to wound. Let's say you get all those through. Man, you are dishing out 9 wounds with a -2 Ren with that.
Yeah, that's scary. I wish it had 2 more wounds, but it is what it is. I mean, you're going to have to decide if you're going to eat up a War Scroll slot for this, if you have any kind of limits. Hey, I forgot one thing I wanted to mention on the Ungor Raiders, just to really throw that in there. They can run and shoot. Don't forget that, guys. They can run and shoot. That's key.
That's really good. Really good, especially with their, with their movement ability being so high. I think their range is 18-inch range.
That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Definitely great War Machine hunters, them guys.
Minotaurs or Minotaurs. It's potato. What's the proper way of saying this on your side of the pond?
Minotaurs. They come from King Minos. From the island of Minos, where who was the hero? Is it Odysseus? No, or Theseus? Yes, Theseus has to go to this king, and he falls in love with his daughter, and his daughter shows him through the labyrinth. She kind of betrays her father and shows him through the labyrinth, and helps him defeat the Minotaur. But the legend of Theseus is quite interesting because his father was so upset to see him leave and go and fight this Minotaur. He said, when you return, make sure you put up a black flag on your ship so I know you're alive. And Theseus, when he returns to his home country, forgets to raise this flag because he's so excited by his victory. And his father's so despaired that he throws himself off the cliffs and dies.
I know. I gorged myself on these on Greek mythology and Norse mythology when I was younger. There's always a double-edged sword to these stories. It's a tragedy. There's great victory, but something had to go wrong. Something had to go. So this dipshit forgot to put the flag up. All right.
I love it. Sorry if I went off topic there.
No, it's okay. It's okay. All right. So Minotaurs. Now, everybody I ever spoke to, and any battle report I ever seen, every review I've ever seen has said the same thing about Minotaurs in the previous editions, specifically in 8th, and that is, I want to put them on the battlefield. They kind of suck. Mm-hmm. Do they, in Age of Sigmar, has that suckage gotten less, or is it completely gone? Are these guys good? Are these guys worthy of putting on the battlefield now?
Well, I put some of these guys up against some dwarves. I had 3 of them. And I gave them, I think I gave them the great axe. I can't remember, but they whiffed all their attacks, so they sucked.
You're setting that bar really high when you're talking about iron breakers as the measure of whether or not a unit is successful in combat.
These were just 2 double-handed weapon dwarves. These guys were I might put my Minotaurs against. So they sucked. I think I lost 1 in combat to them. But then in the next round of combat, I actually got some wounds through, and they dish out some damage. They dish out the same amount of damage that a Doom Bull does. If you've got a Minotaur axe, it deals 2 damage. If you've got the Great Axe, it deals 3 damage. So just getting, 2 wounds through can chop down a unit almost in half.
Yeah, and you could take at least 3 of these in a unit as opposed to be restricting by 1. So that's a lot of meat to get through if you're going to shoot or, you're in combat to try and take down some models.
I mean, I would take 3 Minotaurs over a Doom Bull.
Yeah, I have to agree.
12 wounds in that.
It's a lot more wounds, yes.
And you've got the same amount of damage output. Well, kind of nearly the same.
Well,
you've got
one more, much more. You got 15 attacks, even though you're only 4-ups. As opposed to 7 on the single Doom Bull. I would say, your 3 Minotaurs are definitely the better choice.
I mean, you've still got the Bloodgreed rule, so that's like they've all got, that Ramhorn helm. If you get the dual axes, you can reroll hits of 1, so that's kind of cool. I wouldn't take them with shields. They get a 5-up save already. But if you take them with shields, yeah, you're missing out on an attack there from having dual axes, and you're missing out on the possibility of the great axe.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a pick between what kind of weapon you take.
Use terrain. Get that extra +1 save walking through a forest or walking over a hill. Those things. The rule is that if your full unit is on a terrain piece, it gives you a +1 cover save. It's just a mechanic in the game that a lot of people missed. I missed in the first few games until it was pointed out to me by a very observant viewer. That'll give them their 4-up save while they're moving in, and if you could shirk on the bull shields, and a 4-up save with 4 wounds each is not bad. And I do agree that -2 rend is unbelievable. You know, your armored units, you're just going to start. They're a can opener, and 3 wounds. You get 1 in 3 wounds. That's phenomenal.
And as well, if you take a Bloodkin, which is a sort of a champion Minotaur, he gets an extra attack, so that puts him now on par almost with a Doomball.
Yeah.
So why would you not take these guys over a Doomball?
I would definitely take a unit. I'd probably take 4 or 5, because even in some comp environments, you're going to be able to fit a few extra guys in there. So you'd be able to just fit some extra models, 4 wounds a pop. But it's a small enough footprint that you'll get them in almost any terrain piece, so that they'll get the cover.
What would you choose, though? Which would you choose, the axe or the great axe?
Well, the way I would look at it at Minotaurs is that I think they're a can opener unit. You're going to screen them with another unit, or you're going to have another unit side by side to take some volume to kind of choose how to position where these guys are going to get in. You don't have to worry about flanks or anything. You just want to get these guys in on value targets. I would take the advantage of the extra rend over the extra attack, because you're going to get your hits. You want to be able to bypass that armor. Armor may not be great, but even against very, very tough armored units, you want them to fail those armor saves. Those saves, they're not considered armor saves anymore. And you only need to get 1 in to get that 3 damage. I think it's much more worth it. They're going to fail saves. You're going to get hits. You're going to get wounds, especially when you're talking about at least 3, but 4 or 5 of these guys. You're going to get like 2 or 3 of these through, I think, minimum. And if you do, that's a lot of wounds. And if it's a single wound unit, you're going to decimate them with the battle shock on the other side of that combat. And if they're not, if they're high wound single models like monsters, they're going to get destroyed. They're going to get wrecked.
Yeah, I think the Doomball's been nerfed a bit, and Minotaurs have been raised up.
I agree. It's unfortunate. I like monsters, but I like the fact that Minotaurs are getting their own. All right, Sigmar.
Man,
the gigantic Sigmar.
What Beastmen player hasn't felt the anguish of the Sigmar's pain? As such an awesome fluff model, awesome abilities, which in the old rules were just useless at best. I mean, the only success I ever had with the Sigmar before was being able to manage to throw the rock on an Empire general's head. And when it came to rolling D6 wounds, I only rolled 1. That was the best success I had with the Sigmar. It used to only have like a weapon skill 2, and it had a kind of a real situational rule about enemy wizards. But now the Sigmar is a kind of a different beast altogether. 12 wounds is phenomenal. We don't need to worry about bravery so much, but now it's got a save. It never used to have a save before. So it's got that 5-up save. So there's a 1 in 3 chance of being able to block something. It's hurl boulder. Let's look at that. I mean, it throws chunks of rocks from fallen buildings, and if they target an enemy wizard, you can re-roll fail to hit wounds.
Nice.
Fail to hit rolls. So you hurl a boulder at best. If you've not been wounded, it can hurl it 18-inch. And that's just 1 attack. It's a 4+ to hit and a 2+ to wound. So there's like a 45% chance of doing something there, would you say?
Sure. Math Hammer viewers will correct us, but yes, okay. Sounds good to me.
You got a 50% chance of hitting and you've got a 2+ to wound. So I mean, -2 on the rend with D6 damage. That's great.
That's awesome. That's phenomenal. -2 rend is good, but die 6 wounds. Yeah, you're gonna have those situations where you're gonna roll out 1, but the potential for that with an 18-inch range, unless you've gotten wounded a little bit and it goes down a couple rungs on that ladder, that's phenomenal.
I love it. I mean, I'd love to think that if a unit was in a building, you could throw a rock you could throw one of the rocks at the building and do damage to a building and have it all crumble down on top of their heads.
There's no reason why you can't do the hit. The only disadvantage is whether or not you can see the target. If you can see the target, you still can shoot. You can still throw that boulder. Shooting is not limited in that regard. You don't have to see a percentage of the model. You just have to see the model.
Can you run and shoot it? Let's see. I don't think you can run.
Don't see that, no.
But you can throw it in combat, right?
Yeah, certainly you can.
And you can throw it on top of the head of the guy you're fighting.
I would totally model this to have a big chunk of like the arcane ruins, that big piece, just mid-throw.
I mean, the Games Workshop models are really nice, but there's also on a show I did with Andy last week, we looked at Mears miniatures, and they produce a beautiful looking Sigmar. Pretty expensive, but there's some nice figures out there. And like you say, you can convert a giant easily.
Yeah, I convert everything. I mean, very few of my models are straight what they are out of the box or blister pack. I like putting my stamp on everything. Doesn't mean I can resell that stuff, but then I'm not in this game for selling my stuff after the fact.
I mean, just look at this. If you've suffered 10 wounds out of your 12 wounds, so you've got 2 wounds left, your hurl boulder ability goes down to 3-inch. So you kind of just want to be throwing that on whoever you're fighting, really.
Right. Yeah.
Or you could just foil someone else's plans. You could get this. You could finish off a character model with holding a boulder on their head. That's a lot of fun, I can tell you that.
Yeah, he's definitely a wizard hunter, though, without a doubt. As this guy is moving in the direction of whoever is casting spells, chucking along the way. By the time he gets there, he's on one knee, dragging himself forward, picking up a rock and just like smashing it in front of him.
You can re-roll all failed hit rolls for a Sigmar if the target of the attack is a wizard. So I'm assuming that counts for the boulder as well as in combat.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
I love that he can unbind. That's really cool.
Yeah. Obviously, with the giant, if you buy a Games Workshop giant, one of the heads you get has only got one eye, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's the Spanish head, so that's cool. The other ability is Soul Eater. A Sigmar can attempt to unbind 2 spells in each enemy hero phases.
That's great.
So, Mitch, could you quickly just tell me about unbinding, because I didn't actually use it in my last battle because I was playing it.
All right, so the way the casting mechanic works for spells is, whatever the ranges of the spell it's usually different by each spell, but typically it's in that 16 to 18-inch range, at least the most that I've seen so far as I've gone through these army books. Mm-hmm. If you want to try to stop someone else casting the spell, obviously first they have to roll at or above the casting value that's specific to each spell. If you want to try to stop that spell, it's called an unbinding. Your wizard, by the basic mechanic, and again, this might be adjustable depending on the wizard itself, or even the unit, because some units even have the ability to unbind, like in Bretonia, the men-at-arms, I think, has the ability to unbind, as if they're a wizard themselves. What happens is you have to be within 18 inches of the caster, and you have to have line of sight. So what's going to happen is in the first turn, maybe even first 2 turns, a lot of your spells are going to get off because there's less of a chance that you're going to have closed the gap within that 18-inch range. That doesn't mean it won't happen, especially with things like ambushers and fast-moving units. But the fact is that you're going to have a situation where you're not always going to be within that range when somebody's first hero phase goes off. So it's really just going to be a product in that case of, am I able to cast the spell? Is it a 5 up to get it or a 9 up? In which case I can fail some of those. Depending on how many wizards you have, you may have more chances to cast more spells. But if you only have one caster and it's a 9 up, the good chance is you're going to miss it. But you get it off. Your enemy opponent, if he's outside of 18 inches, doesn't get a chance to unbind. If they are within 18 inches, they need to be able to see you. So a Sigmar has the benefit of being a large model. It's going to be able to see over a lot of terrain. Okay, it's a fast-moving model, so it's going to be able to get around some of those. If somebody's behind a hill or maybe behind a building ruin, or maybe you'd be able to peer through a window that you couldn't see going straight head on, but it could go to the side and is able to see it. It's going to have more options to be able to get within line of sight of enemies and then get close enough where they could start neutering their ability to cast. And then the mechanic is that you have to exceed their roll. So if they rolled a 7, you need to roll higher than that.
Oh, I see.
And they get 2 chances.
Yeah.
2 chances. That's even bigger.
So it says unbind 2 spells. So if you failed on the first one, can you then try and unbind it again?
I'm not sure.
Spell.
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'm not sure if it means 2 different spells or if you. I would think, based on how I'm reading it, that it would have to be 1 chance per spell, but you get 2 chances at 2 different spells, which is no slouch either.
But let me give you this. What if I've got a Bray Shaman and you've got one enemy wizard, he tries to cast something against me, my Sigmar fails to unbind it. Could my wizard try and unbind it too?
Absolutely. There's nothing that says you only get 1 unbinding in the phase. In general, you get 1 unbinding per unit, wizard or otherwise, that has the ability to unbind. The key, though, is and you have to know how many wizards you're facing. If you let's say all your wizards are within range of an enemy who's casting a spell, and they have other wizards, you want to blow your chances to unbind, to try and make sure you get that 1 really bad spell off. They may be sandbagging for the other wizard to cast a good spell that they really wanted. So it kind of has a little bit of a mechanic here as you allow more characters in the game, if you don't neuter that with comp, where you're also playing that game just like you did in the previous Magic phase in 8th edition. It's not quite as complicated, but there is some tactical aspect to it. If you're comped so bad that you're only taking 1 caster, then it's just a matter of, if your caster is stronger than my caster and has maybe extra unbinding or extra spell casting. But you've got to take into consideration that there's going to be potentially other spells cast if there's other wizards on the table. So you may not be in range of that guy. So then you just say, you know what? I'm going to blow both of those unbinds and stop that spell. I can't even get to that other guy.
But the beauty of the Sigmar is you can hold your Bray Shaman back, and they might be out of range of unbinding, but your Sigmar doesn't have to be. Or you could have your wizards in the fray and keep your Sigmar back so he can throw his boulders, but then he can, you know what I mean? He can still throw his boulders and maybe still unbind something. But I mean, let's say, tell me an army that you think it could be quite wizard heavy.
Well, I think that you're going to see armies that maybe have dual purpose wizards. So you're looking at, like, for instance, Vampire Counts or Tomb Kings, because they're going to have, if they have a lot of their characters will have a default spell casting component. You'll see, for instance, the Chaos armies, if not just Warriors of Chaos, Demons of Chaos, because a lot of their units have casting ability.
Yeah.
So those will come right off the top of my head. Yeah.
Let me put this to you then. So we haven't covered Malagor, the special character, but just because it applies to this, he gets to unbind 2 spells as a special ability. So let's say you had Malagor and a Bray Shaman and a Sigmar. Suddenly you can unbind 5 spells.
Yes.
So,
I'm all for it.
Anti-undead army right there.
I'm all for it, man. I am again. I don't want to restrict unique characters or named characters. I don't want to do that at all. I want more of that stuff. I want the feel and the flavor of these games. I mean, you don't have to include it. I mean, some of these characters are throwbacks to the old world that's now no longer there, but some of the characters are still alive or have been resurrected or carried over, so they still do exist. I don't see any reason why. Sigmar is not a character, but was it Malagor? Malagor is a special character. Does he exist in the Age of Sigmar world as it is in the current fluff? Maybe not. But you know what? Play it, enjoy it, and if it's, I don't think we'll go through him, but I just think it's there's special characters. You play the game you want, and play the game that you enjoy. If you want to eliminate special characters, that's fine, but don't by default just throw them out the window. Even the crazy ones still have a place, and they're still and it's a challenge to overcome them too.
Yeah, I mean, Malagor got his ass kicked a little bit in RK on the book, but having said that, and another tactic, because you've got the Sigmar on the table with his 18-inch rock boulder throwing ability that gives you know, a reroll to hit on a 4+ means you've got a great chance of hitting, and a 2+ to wound with 6 wounds and a -1 rend. You're going to take wizards out. You really are. And you've got 12 wounds to soak up any damage against you. It's going to mean, you know, if your vampire counts, you're going to want to hold your vampire right back. And that is a figure that's great in combat. So, you know, there's a lot of mind games going on now.
I love it.
That Sigor.
I love it. That Sigor is going to get targeted. Unless he's paired on the board with a Gorgon.
You know,
now we're talking monsters.
Yeah, man. And that's, you know, your Brave Shaman might be even summoning an extra Sigor.
Absolutely. Buy multiple monsters. Yes.
Plus, he has a decent amount of attacks as well. I mean, we skimmed over that quickly, but if he's not wounded, he gets 8 attacks with his horns. And they're at 4 to hit, 3 to win with a -1 rend.
Oh, nice.
The boulder was actually -2 rend.
Yeah, that boulder is the deal, man. 18 inches to start. Yeah, I love it. I love it. March him down the field and just start throwing stuff at wizards or war machines. I love the Sigor. I would definitely be taking a Sigor. All right, I think we got like 6 units left.
Right,
and before you even look at any special characters. Yeah. So, all right, a Gorgon.
No,
12 wounds, yes.
Straight off, yep, 12 wounds, and he's also got a 5+ stave that he didn't have before. There was a way of regenerating wounds in the old rules.
You can in this one, yeah.
Sacrifice all your attacks for just 1 attack, and if you managed to wound a model, you got something like D3 wounds back. So it sucked because, you know, you want this guy to be killing things, not wasting turns regenerating. But, you know, he's better than the Sigor in combat. He gets a 3+ to hit, and he's got a slightly more range with a 2-inch range. He gets potential for 6 attacks. He gets his Gorgon blades he gets 5 attacks of those, and he has his huge slavering maw his mouth, and that's a 4+ to hit. And to wound there, it's got a little star there. So how does that work? Well, he gets a 2+ to wound.
Yeah, that wounding starts at 2. As he gets weaker, it gets harder for him to wound until it goes down to 4+.
Oh yeah, but it's D6 damage.
Yeah, it's D6 damage with a -1 rend. Yeah.
And I tell you, those Gorgon blades, you know, you get some of those through. They deal 3 damage each wound.
That's sweet.
That's huge.
Very sweet. And you're talking about 5 attacks to start. This guy can dish a ton of damage.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about the healing. You don't have to sacrifice anything to heal with this guy.
No, strength from flesh grants him the ability. He heals D3 wounds at the end of any combat phase in which he has inflicted any wounds with his huge slavering maw. So, yeah, it's kind of the chances are still the same as they were before of regaining wounds, but you're not sacrificing attacks anymore. That's the big thing.
He's worth taking on the battlefield, no problem whatsoever. Yeah.
He also gets this blood greed rule. Each time you roll a wound, roll a 5 or more with the Gorgon's attack, you can immediately make an extra attack.
Oh man. With
the melee weapon. So, you know, I think you're bound to do that once.
Yeah, you have 5 shots. Mm-hmm. So you got to figure at least once, maybe twice. All right, yeah, I'm in. I love him. I want to see him and the Sigor paired up and summon more.
Quick thing: Sigor or Gorgon?
You know, it's situational. I think the Gorgon's going to do so much damage. You know, just a tremendous amount of damage. If I had to choose between the two, I would say, I mean, again, it depends on the army, but I would go for the Sigor just because I love that range ability that this army does not have a lot of. And I like the unbinding ability, but my answer is unfortunately not going to be a proper answer because I'm going to say both because you can definitely take both. Why not?
I would say Sigor so you can get them shooting attacks in. And then summon a Gorgon, and then You summon it when things are looking bad for you. You know what I mean? And this guy can just turn the tide.
And you could summon him really on the other side of the table. Yeah. Okay, I'm with you. Because the Sigmar is going to be able to do that unbinding early. Run it up, get within range, get line of sight, and now you can do 2 unbindings.
Yeah.
All right, Centaurs.
Oh well, Centaurs were another real disappointing unit in the old rules. The box that contained 5 of them cost £36. That's like $50, $55. So, and these guys were only 1 wound models, so they were rubbish. I managed to get some a bit cheaper than that, and then I enjoyed painting them. And the character Gorus Warhoof is one of my favorites. So I've got a soft spot for Centaurs. I was so pleased when I saw the war scroll that now gives them 2 wounds. I was a little disappointed though when I realized all cavalry models seem to have 2 wounds.
Yeah, you know what it does? I don't think that cavalry in general have gotten weaker. I think that fast cav have gotten stronger, where they can still use their chaffing up type ability, but they're much hardier in Age of Sigmar than they were. They're not as much throwaway units as they were in 8th edition, and I don't think that's a bad thing. They still can contribute much more. They're not just take me and waste a turn or waste a charge or redirect. They can actually dish too.
Exactly. It's almost like Games Workshop didn't want to have redirector units anymore that were just speed bumps.
Well, you can still redirect in this game. It's just a different mechanic because of the way you remove models from when you take wounds, and because of the pile in, which is not forced. You're not required to pile in, but if you pile in to get more of your unit to bear into combat, you can start leading guys away or even stranding other units that haven't attacked yet. So there is a mechanic to it, but it's not as simple as here's my line of guys, and now you have no choice but to go up against them because the charging and the closing of the door and the line of sight all forced you to do that. It's a different type of a mechanic now, which I don't think it's not lesser. It's just different.
I love it. I mean, what I did in my last game, I put my Centaurs next to my giant, and you keep these guys next to a big monster. Who's your enemy going to go against? They're going to go against the giant every time, and they can ignore these Centaurs. So you can keep these guys alive. You can keep them alive, and they can do a little bit of extra damage coming in on the side. And they've got that movement, huge movement 12-inch.
I know we're starting to get pressed for time, but I just wanted to mention to people that no one here can see that Remington Steel, for the 4% of women that are watching my channel, because I do have 4%.
4%.
I've looked. 4% of my viewers are women. I love all of you, in a very platonic way because I'm married very happily. But I'm very happy to have 4% of followers of women. Remington Steel, I wish I had a picture of this to put up. I may have to unshare the screen. Is like doing the centerfold-esque scene, leaning down with his hand on his head while he's doing this review, which is just very, very interesting. I'm depriving you of this image for the rest of the people watching.
I'm naked from the waist down as well.
I don't want to know anything about that. Yeah, I'm not wearing any underwear. But I never wear underwear. Okay, now I've lost all those viewers now. All right. All right, back to it.
They've got this they had this kind of cool drunken rule before where you roll at the start of the battle, and there's 3 different choices. You could become stubborn, you could +1 to your leadership, or you could gain an extra initiative. Now there's only one thing that happens for this drunken courage rule. You roll a dice for the unit in each battle shock phase. Add the result of the roll to their bravery until the end of that phase. Now their bravery, unfortunately, is only 3. Only 3. So that sucks.
They need the drunken courage.
They need that. But at least you're guaranteed to get something.
Yeah, I like that. You know what it is? It's the same thing as giving them like a 6 or a 7 bravery. But in this case, they're like, let's have fun with it.
But I don't know why they're so their bravery is so poor. Fluff wise, I don't understand that.
Well, I don't think they are. I think the fact that they're drunk is what balances it out. It's the flavor of saying, I'm going to get at least a 3 on average. I'm going to have a 6 bravery, which is average in this game.
Well, why not start them off with a 6 and then give them, extra bravery? Because the reason why I say that is because you don't really field a huge unit of Centaurs. No one ever did. You're going to have 10 maximum. I've never seen more than 10 being fielded ever.
Yeah, at least you have the drunken courage to balance that. But I see what you're saying. Why are they starting out so low?
Yeah, because that automatically makes them missile fodder. You can shoot off one, and you roll poorly on the drunken courage, you could lose. I don't know. You could lose the rest of them if you've only got a 5-man unit.
Got it.
So, like I said, that's another reason to keep these guys next to a monster.
Yeah, well, look, it's the Achilles heel. I could see where shooting may be a big deal, but fortunately they get it they get it in the battle shock phase, so it's not like they're going to miss out on it for some reason.
Yeah, they get a 4+ save because you can give them these bucklers, these little shields, and they've also got spears. They don't have the throwing axe ability that they did in the old rules. We had to pay points to get those. They were pretty useless anyway. But with the spear on the roll on the turn where you charge, you can re-roll failed to wound hits. But they've only got 4 to hit, 4 to wound, so they're just like gauze. However, they do get 2 attacks now.
Yeah, their abilities are I think is in the fast moving. They have 12 move. They can charge. They can re-roll charges, and they can run and charge. These guys are getting someplace fast.
Big time. So but you can't expect these guys to take on a bigger unit, because if they just lose if they just take 1 or 2 casualties, you're rolling on that bravery test, and you're gonna suffer. But if you get these guys into the war machines, then they're gonna be good.
This is a prime target for immunity to battle shock. These guys, in my opinion, are going to be striking from behind units or between units after high-value targets, whether they're war machines or wizards. They're going to be able to move fast and do what they need to do without having to worry about whether or not they ran. And they've got that base 12 inches, which is just a huge threat range. And here's the other thing. They don't have to be in the front line. They've got spears. So you put them in the secondary rank to be able to do their spear work. I think that's where they're not frontline, in my opinion. They can last with the 2 wounds and the extra 4 up in combat, but I don't think that they're going to shine in that capacity. They're going to be a support unit, like you were saying. Put your Centaurs next to a giant or a Gorgon or something.
Yeah, another scavenger unit maybe. So on one side of the table, you could have your Ungor Raiders that are kind of like scavengers or your Ungors, and then on the other side, maybe you could have your Centaurs, or you hold the Centaurs back until everything's engaged, and then you can choose your target.
Yeah, I love that move and the run and shoot. I mean, the run and charge, killer. As a 12 base.
Yeah, but you see, you've got to be cautious there, Mitch, because a lot of people see that high movement and they just bomb them up forward, and they could easily be isolated. And,
that I agree. That's why I said you put them behind or between units. You get that extra spear attacks for 2-inch range, and then you shoot them out when you need them.
Yeah.
All right, Razor Gores. We're gonna bypass the special character. We go to Razor Gores. And we're talking about 4 wounds a pop, and that's nice. That's always good. Any number. So these are just butch little, crazy. What do these guys look like?
Razor, the Razor Gore looks like Pumbaa from one of the Disney characters. Everyone used to say that. It's just basically a giant boar with loads of spikes sticking out of him. And some people said this was Games Workshop's worst model. I managed to get hold of one, and it was a metal one, and it's the heaviest model. It's just like picking up a rock. You kind of want to throw it, But I actually really enjoyed painting this model, and I liked it a lot. in the last set of rules. Points values from before were equal to a Minotaur, and Mr. Malorian put out a great video sort of encouraging people to take a unit of these guys rather than a unit of Minotaurs. But generally, you don't see them being taken in as a herd. You just see maybe one, maybe two. But there's no reason why you couldn't take 6 in a unit, and they'd be very, very powerful.
Especially in Age of Sigmar. I agree.
Yeah.
I would take them in 5 units of 4 to 6, definitely. Good amount of wounds. You're not going to wipe them off the map. They move fast. They're impulsive at 12 inches. They have to charge.
Yeah, but you'd want them to. You'd want them to, unless it was some kind of objective game you were playing. You use these guys as a bit of a hammer.
Yeah, and they can re-roll the charges, add +1 to the wound if they charge, which is they're going to be charging. Once they get stuck in, they won't get that, but they're going to always be charging. I would take them. I like them. They're going to give your opponents fits because they're going to they'll get in there. They'll cause them to people to get engaged with this unit within that threat range, and you could set up follow-ups for successive turns as a result, and they're not going to get wiped off the map so quickly.
Yeah,
those 4 wounds are going to matter. Yeah,
and remember, panic is no longer an issue. Panic in an army. So before, a Razorgore had really low leadership and would run off the table if maybe your Ungors or your Harpies got killed. So maybe not take a unit of these, because then you'd be suffering from bravery if you lost one of the models. Having said that, they've got 4 wounds, so you're not going to lose that many in one turn.
Yeah,
shooting. You could have them as a solid block. Or you could have a few individual ones, causing mayhem. Just charging them in, softening a unit, and then another unit comes in. Yeah,
I think they're worth taking.
But as a whole war scroll where you can only take one of them, I don't know about that.
No, as any number of models, I wouldn't take just one on these guys.
Right.
If you have a fully open game where it doesn't matter, you're not comping numbers of war scrolls, you're not comping wounds, there is something to be said about just taking one in your war scroll, because you have the base game doesn't have any restrictions. In a comped environment, I would take this unit, but I would take it with depending on how, if there's other comp things like maximum wounds on your army and stuff. But I would take 3 to 4 of these guys, because that 4 wounds is pretty solid. And I like that they have 4 attacks. Okay, 4 to hit, nothing crazy. They will get pluses to hit rolls if they charged, which is going to bring it to the very respectable 3 up, 3 up. Nice -1 rend, only 1 damage, but this is the thing. This unit's going to get into combat. They're going to stick for a little while because they got multiple wounds. They're going to dish out some damage, and then they're going to get supported by something else in your army. They're going to survive long enough for somebody to come in and help them. Typically.
I mean, if you can get a few of these, they're like really good warhounds. Really good warhounds. But one thing I've just noticed from the war scrolls is that they're not producing war scrolls for models that they don't have available.
Yeah, at the end of each of these, they substitute. They say use this profile. So it's not that they don't have it where you can't play it. It's that use that instead.
I see, because there was a Razorgore Chariot, and that was kind of brutal. And there were a couple of special characters that don't appear on this because there's no models for them. But yeah, should we move on?
Yep. Chaos Warhounds.
These were, in my opinion, worse than Harpies. They were worse than Ungor Raiders. I mean, you'd only field these because you've got some, and they always be redirectors, if anything, if nothing else. Sorry. So let's have a look at them. They add 6 inch to its move rather than rolling a dice if it runs. So it's movement of 10, so that's a guaranteed 16 inch.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. They've got 2 attacks each, which is a nice new bonus. 4 to hit, 4 to wound. Yeah.
I you know what? If I had to choose these above others, there's certainly going to be some. I would want to take a larger group of them, than just the 5, because they're going to die with that 4 bravery pretty quick and only a 6-up save.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those things. They're very fast. I think that they're gonna get to their target really quickly.
Yeah, in the last edition, things like Warhounds would be the first to die and the first to move up. maybe now a more plausible tactic would be to hold these kind of units back and to use them as like I said, as scavenging, reinforcing units. You know, so you're not having to worry about shooting so much.
All right, let's take a look at harpies because I'm starting to get short on time myself.
Okay.
Okay, harpies are pretty much the same as they used to be. I'm surprised that they're only still at 1 wound, but an incredibly long fly range.
16-inch.
Yeah.
They have a questionable special rule. You know, if a model flees within 16-inch on a roll of a 6, an additional model from the same unit is pounced upon by the harpies. And that 6 is way too high, man.
Yeah.
You're only going to have maybe 3 or 4 models maximum running away, maybe. You know, so I don't know. 1 in 6 times 4 chance of killing an extra one.
I just think that it's a bonus. It's not a feature that you bank on. Really, it's not. I don't think that rolling that 6 up is that big of a deal. I think that we're looking at here 16 inches of the board. So we're talking about 32 inches around.
Mm-hmm.
You have these guys, you have more than 1 unit, or maybe you just have 1 unit on one whole section of the table wherever there's a combat. Maybe it's only on a 6. But when you're talking about the entirety of the combat, anywhere there's a combat on the table, this rule could come into play. Now, Battle Shock can be very common or very rare, depending on the army structures, depending on how much of the command abilities you use. If you use the default command ability or which army you have with whatever their command abilities are.
Mitch, sorry to stop you, but it's not. I got it wrong. It's not Battle Shock. It's if the enemy model flees.
Yeah, but the fleeing is as a result of Battle Shock.
Oh, so you can't choose to flee.
No, the flee mechanic, the way they describe Battle Shock is that if you fail a Battle Shock test, the difference in the roll with the amount of models you've lost and your bravery plus a die 6,
yep,
you lose that many more models. Those guys have fled the battlefield.
Yeah,
okay? That's the fleeing mechanic. There's no other fleeing mechanic in the game. They just call it fleeing. Yeah. And if that's the case, this is just a way to run up the score further. So if let's say there's 2 or 3 Battle Shocks that have been taken on the board.
Yeah,
and they're enemy Battle Shocks, not your Battle Shocks from your own army, but enemy Battle Shocks. These harpies basically add on to that with the potential of taking another model off. Now, let's also look at what that means. If it's a 1 wound unit, it's not that big of a deal. They just lost an extra guy. Let's say they're a cavalry unit, 2 wounds. They lost somebody, and you rolled a die 6. You rolled a 6. They lose another cav. Or if it's an elite unit with 3 or 4 wounds, they lose another guy. They've already lost 1 because of whatever rolling scenario it was, and maybe it wasn't that detrimental. But now they've lost another one, and it may not happen a lot. But when it happens, that's going to hurt.
What if they're multi-wound?
You lose models. Fleeing units are models, not wounds.
So it can really come into play if you've got multiple wound units that are fleeing.
That's right. If I've got a unit of like say 6 or 8 ogres.
Yeah,
and I lost 2 models, and I have like a mediocre bravery, and I rolled poorly, and I lost say 1 more, just 1 more. Yeah. On a roll of a 6, now I've lost 2, and on a high 4 wound, high wound individual model unit with not a lot of quantity, and again, a 6 to 8 is a pretty decent sized unit, but they're typically going to be at least 6 on those. Now I've lost another guy just because of this mechanic, and that's just 1 unit. Let's say there's another unit across the board that within that 36-inch swath. It's not going to happen all the time, and it's not going to happen in droves. But when it does happen, it can be nice. It's a nice little bonus. You don't bank on it.
But how about this, Mitch? What if you have 4 units of 5 harpies, all encircling the battlefield within 16 inches of the middle?
Yeah, that's going to matter.
You know what I mean? Suddenly, you got harpies being, acting out their fluff, just sort of hanging around the battlefield like vultures, waiting for something that they can pounce upon that's easy prey.
Absolutely.
I think that's the way to use these guys.
Yeah, you don't get them stuck in. You wait for the opportunities. I agree.
Yeah, wait for the opportunities, or maybe use them as shields. In my last game, I had a Centaur and some harpies on the left-hand side, and the gyrocopter came in and just steamed off the harpies easily in 1 turn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But maybe that was better than steaming into the giant or steaming into the centaurs. But I would say it's probably with the Harpies, have a few units of them.
Yeah, especially against armies that have high model count that with low wounds, where there's lots of those units where they're going to lose guys. This is the way to add on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why not fly them? Somehow fly them around the back of the battlefield, and they could just hang around at the back somewhere in the corner. I don't know, or have a few covering the angles. But yeah, they are cannon fodder. They really are.
All right, let's get to. We only have a few more of these, and I think we're going to have to hold off on special characters. But we could do this another time with special characters for this army. Chaos Spawn.
Chaos Spawn. Well, these used to take up your rare section in the old edition, and it kind of sucked because the rare monsters were really good. Why would you want to waste your points and allotment of points and get some spawn? Just back to the special characters. One of them creates spawn from enemy models, so they could be quite useful to actually have some in your armory, let's say. But I don't know, they look exactly the same as they were before. The 2D random do 2d6 moves, 2d6 attacks, 4+ to hit, 4+ to wound, 1 damage. They've got 10 bravery, but they're only going to really, it says a unit of Chaos Spawn has any number of models, but it could be quite interesting to field a number. I've never seen that happen. They just seem to roam around on their own. You get...
That's a big change.
Yeah. You get some affiliations with the Dark Gods here, Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, or Slaanesh, when you're setting up that unit. So maybe you could get some bonuses with that. You also have these Writhing Tentacles, which is a special ability. If you roll a double when determining the number of attacks, your wound characteristic of 3+ instead of 4+. So that's okay.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I like 2d6 attacks, nice range. They're 2d6 on a lot of randomness here. 2d6 in terms of movement. I think that these are the kind of things that are also going to be one of those. It's going to grab attention of your opponent. You don't know if they're going to necessarily come into play because of the randomness. If you have an army that crosses the barriers with some extra chaos stuff, maybe you have, a caster, a Tzeentch caster, or some other units from Nurgle or something, kind of fleshing out the whole chaos keyword. You certainly, the Chaos Spawn will still be fluffy, but their 5 wounds is very respectable, and of course 10 bravery is there's not much to say about that. That's awesome. But I mean, it really depends on what the flavor of your army is. There's certainly an interesting ad. They may work for you, and they may also not be able to get into exactly when you want them to because of that randomness.
I think fielding them as single models, have them sort of crawl up to an objective and just keep it there. Maybe it's a good thing to occupy parts of the board rather than to use it, because it's unpredictable, trying to get it into combat.
Yeah, so, that's a great point.
Okay.
Take like a third or a quarter of the board and just have like 3 or 4 of these guys just kind of roam around there.
Yeah.
See what your opponent does. They'll probably wave off. That's a good point. All right. Yes, I love giants.
Who doesn't love giants, and who wasn't gutted when they realized the giant was kind of rubbish in the last edition?
Ain't rubbish now.
Oh my God. 12 wounds with a 5+ save, no less. Half decent bravery, but we don't need to worry about that because it's a single model. It's massive club with a 3-inch range, 3+ to hit, 3+ to wound, and you've got 3d6 attacks on that.
Yeah.
3d6 attacks if you've not been wounded. That is huge.
Yes.
You can decimate a unit, and that's at -1 rend. So that is your guaranteer, that attack. Okay, but there's a couple of other extra attacks that the giant gets. The massive club attack is your meat and potatoes. That is the one that's almost guaranteed to take models off the table. Unfortunately, the other attacks are a bit hit and miss. When they hit hard, but they can easily miss because you only get 1 chance.
Yeah.
Got the headbutt, and that's a 4+ to hit, 3+ to wound. In the game I played with the giant, and I must have had about 5 or 6 combat rounds in the duration of the battle, I never managed to get one of these to work. And one of those combats was against a giant slayer. Not a troll, but a giant slayer dwarf.
Yep.
And I just thought it'd be great to fight one of these guys, not realizing that these guys give D6 wounds when you kill them when they fight against a giant. So I still managed to survive that combat because of the massive club, basically, just scything it down. If you can get that headbutt through, it can deal D6 wounds.
Yeah.
With a -3 rend. That is a great character killer.
Yeah, it might as well be mortal wounds. That's just -3 is crazy.
Yeah. So, that is... I put him up against Vander's Hammerhand, the Stormcast Eternal guy.
Yeah.
That little dragon horse thing. And the giant just annihilated him.
Oh, I had the other direction. I did that also. I had 2 giants, a Thunder Tusk, and I borrowed my son's army. He gave me the okay. I had a Thunder Tusk, 2 giants, a Butcher, and 5 bulls. And one of the giants was running off towards an objective, just ran the other direction on the other side of the battlefield. And my opponent was like, "No, you're not having any of that." He ran that guy on his what is it, a lizard mount. And these 2 guys squared off and just pummeling each other. And eventually my wounds diminished my capability where his did not.
Yeah.
And it just, because that 3d6 sounds great on paper, right? But once you take 3 wounds, now it goes down to 2d6. Yeah. So he gets that's his bread and butter, that attack. The other ones, you're only getting 1 shot. So it's even a 3 up on the mighty kick. But still, you have different ways to do things here. And the unfortunate thing is that I got this down to 1 wound. The enemy, that named character, 1 wound. And when he finally died, he killed the giant. It was the roll off for the special ability, which I love. I mean, it's not as wacky as it was in the previous edition, but it still matters. You have to roll off. Whoever rolls the highest says which direction the giant falls. And he won the roll. I thought it would be so perfect if he killed my giant and my giant did the 1 wound left and they killed each other and he just wound up underneath this lump of flesh. Didn't happen though.
I love the giant. I mean, it's indicative that Games Workshop have devoted an entire page in its new book when it's just showing pictures of models. It's put a whole page of these 3 amazing looking giants stepping out into the mist.
We're gonna see a war scroll where there's gonna be a herd of giants. We're definitely gonna be seeing that.
I love it. I mean, the mighty kick, that's great. 3+ to hit, 3+ to wound. Again, I didn't manage to get that off. I mean, just appalling rolling. But with -2 rend and D3 wounds, that's another little leveler there. But my favourite, we've talked about the timber where he falls. But the most comedy rule about the giant for me is the stuff him in the bag. Immediately before a giant makes its attack in the combat phase, so you're gonna, you're gonna get a chance to do this every go that you're fighting in. Mm-hmm. When it's your turn to fight, you pick up an enemy model within 1 inch and you roll a dice. If the result is at least double the enemy's wounds characteristics, most models in the game have 1 wound, let's say, so you've only got to roll a 2. It is grabbed and stuffed in the giant's bag for later. The enemy model is treated as being slain. Now, what if it's a cavalry model, or it's one of those Stormcast Eternals with 2 wounds or 3 wounds? If
you roll a 4, yeah,
level 6. You're picking up one of these guys, automatically killing them.
Yep.
And I did it 3 turns in a row. And I did it to these prosecutor guys with these wings.
Oh no!
So I just snatched one out of the air and just stuffed him in the bag. It was
great. I love it.
The only point of contention we had was the bit of writing where it says, if the result is at least double the enemy's wound characteristics. So what if you're doing a character that has 6 wounds but it's only got 3 wounds left.
Yeah, I had this conversation when I talked about giants with Tom on ogres, orcs, and goblins.
Yeah.
If it said the model's wounds or remaining wounds,
Right.
then I would say a wounded model would apply. But
Yeah.
because it says the characteristic, your characteristic is a static number. All right, and I'm firm on this because I had posed that question. And Tom gave me a great answer. The way it's written, I think it's specifically meant to not give you the opportunity to get characters or to get monsters, because there's not going to be any stuffing of dragons in a bag. This is meant to take rank and file or even cavalry type units at best, and just have the opportunity to remove one each turn off the battlefield, just plucking one off the battlefield as a, and it's not a guarantee, but it's not meant to take ridiculously big models, because that's the whole idea. He's a giant. He's taking little, even if it's a guy on a horse, you know.
You can't do this against a Minotaur or an ogre.
No, and you shouldn't. You shouldn't. It shouldn't
Now,
be.
now, so we've talked about all these great positives of giant, but there is one negative, and I actually overlooked this rule. And looking back, if I'd applied it, I may not have took out that hero, because I was about 4 inches away, so I still had to roll to charge, and I think I rolled a double 4. And unfortunately, if you roll a double when you're making a charge roll, you get this drunken stagger rule that applies, and the giant falls. But you can determine the direction the giant falls.
Well, you got to roll off.
Ah, I see.
It's the same as if it's been slain. So yeah, you gotta win that roll. Otherwise, your opponent can say, yeah, he falls on his own troops because that's an advantage. But then he completes his charge. So that it's goofy and it's awesome and it's just perfect because he's just this lumbering, non-dexterous giant, tripping over a tree stump or something.
So I don't know. There's a pretty good chance you could roll a double.
Yeah.
But perhaps it's wise to keep your own models a little bit away, if possible, from that. But the great thing is that in the past editions, when the giant falls over, he's gone, he's out, and now it's a bit more realistic because after he's fallen over, he can get up again.
Yeah, that's just for charges. He does fall when he dies, but that's his last thing, But yeah, this is just him flattening some friends or foes that might have been a little bit too close to a lumbering giant. And I have to admit, if I was in the battlefield with a giant, I'd be gauging just how much distance there is with that sweeping club anyway. Because I'm sure the giant's not fully distinguishing what he's after. It's just pointing in one direction and attacking.
The giant for me is an auto-include. And what I love about the giant more than anything is that you can use him in so many different armies. You can have him in the Beastmen, Orcs and Goblins. You can have him in the Ogres, and you can have him in Chaos as well.
I have to appeal to anybody who organizes events. Stop trying to neuter characters and monsters with this 0 to 2 nonsense. If you don't go full on freeform and you have to put some kind of comp in because you and your customer base or your local group decides that that's what they want, just to make it not go out of control, don't neuter these games by making it that you can't take there's such flavor in having armies with more characters or more monsters. This is not 8th edition. You can still have those types of games, absolutely. And I've already proven that with at least one video, and I'm going to be proving it specifically with armies built to do that. But this is a game that gives you more freedom. Use it. Don't try to restrict it. The idea of having 1 or 2 giants or having a herd of giants is as part of a war scroll that I think I'm absolutely sure we're going to see that. It was just too, like you said, it's too obvious. They have more than one page that specifically referred to this tribe of giants, and they have like 3 or 4 giants on the page. We're going to see that. In the same way we have a war scroll that shows 3 tree men or 3 dragons. These are options. Don't restrict them. There's a place for that in these games. And even if you want to try and do this competitively and try to make some changes, don't restrict it. Make people make choices. Make it 0 to 6. Choose from heroes or monsters. Something like that.
I think the giant should be able to appear in the Empire army as well for fun.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love it if there was a guy running in front that had like a goat carcass kind of coaxing him, and there was a chance that he got just gobbled up by the giant, with the goat if the giant grabbed it. But he kind of let him on, I
mean, tactically speaking, you don't have to worry about killing these monsters, just wound them.
Yeah.
You know, you're facing an army with multiple monsters. Just wound them, grind them down, and they become, less.
I agree.
So we've got the last one now, mate.
Oh, we do have one more, because I just wanted to show all the ladies out there what you look like when you're in your pose. There you go. I want you to know that we went up to 19 viewers right after I said that. So here we go. Okay.
Need some petals around me now and a harem. I'll be happy.
All right, let's go back. We have one more. Last one. All right.
Okay, we have the Jabber's Life.
Yeah, how could I miss the Jabber's Life? I'm so sorry.
Everyone loves the Jabber's Life.
Even more so now.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's an expensive model to buy. It's like £42. And it sucked so much in the last edition. It only had 5 wounds and it had a questionable save. It sucked. The only guarantee maybe was a stomp attack, and it had this darting tongue attack, which was kind of rubbish as well, because it's only one. It can only kill one, do 1 wound's worth of damage. Now, disappointing to see the Slithy tongue attack is still a bit rubbish because it only does 1 damage. It'd be nice for me. It'd be good if the Slithy tongue could automatically do a mortal wound or take a model off. Like it just wraps its tongue around even something like an ogre. Maybe it could wrap its tongue around and just draw it in. But it can't. It can only do one damage with that. It's got 10 wounds, which is a massive improvement from before. It's got its Vorpal Claw attack, which if it's not wounded, it can do 6 attacks with a 3+ to wound at -2 rend, which is awesome. Unfortunately for me, by the time the Jabber's Life got into combat, it suffered a fair few wounds. It's a big attractor of enemy wizard shooting and war machines. So it's the key to this thing is you get it in combat, because although it has this spike tail attack, which is just a 4+ to hit and on average a 3 or 4+ to wound, doing D3 damage, that's a good one. But you've got only got that 1 chance to hit with it.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is getting into combat, because if people wound you, they suffer big, because it's got a rule called Spurting Bile Blood. Roll a dice for each wound inflicted on this model in the combat phase. If you roll 4 or more, you get D3 mortal wounds for each roll.
Nice.
So, let's say you put your Jabber's Life in to a unit of Minotaurs, right? And the Minotaurs attack first. The Minotaurs kill it to within an inch of its life, and maybe get like 7 wounds on it, with those big double-handed axes. 7 wounds, and you roll 7 dice. And let's say you roll 3 of those dice with 4 or more on the dice. 3 times D3 mortal wounds.
Yeah, that's gonna hurt.
And you've not even made your own attack.
Yeah.
So that's a lovely little kickback there to the Jabber's Life.
And that doesn't diminish. That's throughout the life of the creature.
Yeah. So the key to the Jabber's Life is, especially in assassination missions, get this guy into the enemy character.
Yeah, and you use the retreat. If they don't block off all avenues for you to move, I mean, you can fly. You can fly. Just retreat until you get to your target.
That's something I really need to explore. And I know you've mentioned that people haven't used. We really haven't got to the bottom of this retreating move at all. I didn't use it in my last game. I didn't really think to use it. But man, I think we can have so many more fun shenanigans in this game using the retreat.
Absolutely. If you have a flying unit with good range, retreating you can get the unit in there, suffer some damage, dish it out, and then retreat out and then bring in a fresh unit. And your opponent is diminished, and you've now got a fresh unit that's gotten a chance to move up. Maybe they weren't as fast. As long as that flying unit is beefy enough to survive, maybe it's lost a couple of models. Other things are things like this, where it's a flyer, it's a beastly singular unit, singular model. but it has a rule that still dishes out damage throughout its life. Now, look, the Jabberslife gets weakened very quickly. It starts off with a lot of positives, but even if it suffers, right, it's usually the wound scale for as monsters diminish start at like 3 wounds. In this case, you do 2 wounds to it, it's at the next rung in the ladder, but it doesn't go that bad. It's not that bad. You know, he loses a couple move, loses 1 at Vorpal Claws. Its spike tail is still 3 up, so that hasn't changed. So it's getting, it's starting to, to go down there. But even if it's down to like 2 wounds, that spurting vile blood is the key. You want this thing in combat wherever you want it, and even if it gets into combat, the fly with a decent, until it's really wounded, where it has to stay outside of 3 inches when it lands on that retreat. If somebody countercharges it, they're going to be shooting it. They're going to be shooting this guy before they go and leave it into combat, because honestly, you do not want to be anywhere near this thing as it's taking damage.
No. And remember, you can always summon him back. You can always summon another one. Let's say you get this guy into the character, and the character mortally wounds the Jabberslife, and he gets covered in this black bile blood, this acid kind of blood, and he's not having another round of combat with this Jabberslife, so he flees. Right?
Yep.
And you've got your nice harpies waiting nearby.
Yep. Absolutely. That's how you. Yeah. There's nice synergy there. I see exactly what you mean.
I like that. You've also got this other ability called Aura of Madness, and this is pretty cool. Roll a dice for each enemy unit that's within 6 inches of this model in your hero phase. On a roll of a 6, the unit is overcome by madness until your next hero phase. That unit can't be selected to cast spells, move, attack, charge, or pile in.
Nice.
So for me, the key to the Jabberslife is to get it right in the middle of the board. Try and soak up some of those missile things. Hopefully, maybe they're targeting some of your chaff. With that, you get the Jabberslife right in the middle, and in all the combat that's going on, there's a good chance. Maybe there's 6 units near you. You could nullify one of those units or hero characters.
Yeah, I see exactly what you mean. I think that, look, you're restricted by 3 inches, getting within 3 inches in your movement phase from your opponent, but this is a 6-inch range. So you could potentially launch this guy to within, say, 4 or 5 inches of your opponent, move other units to intervene between you and the Jabberslife, and then those guys can then pile into combat. Maybe not the Jabberslife, but he still has this nice ability where your opponent can't pile in. If they're within range, if there's a wizard nearby, they can't cast. But these guys can't attack or charge. They're not going to attack or charge your units that have moved in right in front of your Jabberslife and then now attacked. There's no reprisal. All right. Now, again, it's only on a roll of a 6, but there could be multiple units within range. Yeah. And you still can shoot that 9-inch range to go after high value targets like other characters. Yeah, that's a sweet ability, especially because it's a 6-inch range.
That's lovely. If you can get that put off on that unit that's holding up your gauze, and it buys you that turn to get other units in to help your units that are struggling.
I agree.
And it nullifies those wizards. I don't know how it works against war machines, to be honest.
Well, I think it still would apply. It doesn't distinguish.
I mean, that's lovely, So get that right in the middle, I think.
All right, I'm going to go and stop our screen share here.
Okay.
So, all right, Remington, Jabberslife, I think, is a huge improvement on where it used to be. I know a lot of people have been a little sore because they love this model, they love the idea of it, but it never really was worth it. And in a no points environment, all those models, all those units that you never would have thought of taking in Age of Sigmar have been opened up. There's no reason not to take something if you think that it's just cool. Everything is killy. All the most powerful units are vulnerable still. They all have a place. Whether you have comp of some kind or no comp, I think that things like the Jabberslife are a good example of that. Overall, the army for the Beastmen, I think, is a big improvement. I think that Age of Sigmar really helped this army become and I'm not going to use the word competitive, but more more appropriate to actually field, as opposed to I just love this army. You're not going to feel like you're at a tremendous disadvantage just because of your that you chose this army. There's a lot that you can do, and there's a lot of capability in the Beastmen army. They're not a slouch. They can be very scary.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the Beastmen develop in the future fluff of Age of Sigmar. In the past, they've always been on the outskirts, always the scavengers, always the ones that got, were the first to lead the charge of chaos and the first to die in huge droves. It'd be interesting to see how they develop, whether they have some kind of civilization and they have some kind of progression, if you like, and they're not just sort of, the kind of vermin, if you like. We can't say vermin, but you know what I mean. But the things that are just need to be eradicated from the world,
Yeah. I think that there'll be a place for them. I think in the new fluff, just like a lot of remnants of the other races were saved by Sigmar. We've already seen like other armies have a presence. Are they going to be the same that the way we've seen them in the old world? No, we're not going to see humans even the same. They're the scavengers now.
Yeah,
but, we're going to see other. I haven't read the fluff, cover to cover, but I've looked at it. I've had conversations with people about it, and I've got the hardcover book, so I've started to go through it. There's going to be some changes, but we've already seen things like the Dryads and the Treemen. They still exist in exactly the same way.
Yeah,
we haven't seen what's going on with the elves, but we'll see them when they come back. I'm sure that'll be a big event with a lot of releases. There's a lot still to be said, but I think Beastmen are going to have a presence. Chaos is not going anywhere. They're still the big bad, but
if you want character, and you like your evil monsters, Beastmen are the army of choice for me. Chaos to me doesn't have nearly as much character than the Beastmen has. You've got these full-plated armored warriors. You can't even see their faces. It's all about flesh and fur with the Beastmen. There's so much fun to play. You know what I mean? If you want to get your things up in combat, and you've got some nice little tricks up your sleeve as well, on your flanks and in the back, you've got some great magic abilities there. We haven't covered the special characters who bring even more character to this army, so I can't recommend it enough. They're a lot of fun. A lot of fun to paint and model as well, and they're no longer the whipping boys.
I don't think there's any way we could have ended it better on a summation like that, Remington. Thanks so much, and I appreciate your coming on to the channel and helping me with this. I know there's some other people that are just as well known, if not more, about the Beastmen, but I wanted to have you on. I'm going to have Andy on with Dwarves when I can schedule it, and maybe we can get Pizzazu. Is that his name?
Pezzapoo.
I've subscribed to his channel, and I certainly like his outlook and his view on Age of Sigmar. So I'd like to go. I'm going to extend an offer to him as well. If it's not going to be an army unlocking, maybe he'll still be interested in doing that. Maybe it'll just be a discussion on the game in general.
Yeah, he's a craftsman, and he's starting to make his own terrain. And he wants to get it mass produced, and he's in talks with some people, with some big gaming companies like X-Wing, Drop Zone Commander and stuff like that, in producing that. So he's got a lot to offer. He's also started a group on Facebook called Sanctuary of Sigmar. If you haven't joined this group already, it's a closed group, but it's closed because they don't want any assholes to join it. People that have been slagging off Sigmar, they're not really welcome in this particular community. It's all about positivity and trying to, us meld this game into something that's even more fun. So go along to Sanctuary of Sigmar.
I will. And if he has samples that he wants to send out to me, I certainly will showcase them, not just on the channel and throw some love his way in terms of in promotion, but he'll see that stuff on the table in the battle reports. I'll mention that to him, but you pass that on if you wouldn't mind. Hey, again, Remington, thanks so much. This is one of the longest one I've done so far. But it was great doing this with you, and I'm sure we're going to do more. We'll circle back to the special characters on another one.
Thanks so much for having me, and I know I trail off into other things, but I've had a great time. Thank you so much, Mitch. Cheers.
I'm probably the Prince of Ramble.
But this is great. People are painting models and stuff. Hopefully their opinions have changed about the Beastmen somewhat. You know, that's the idea.
Absolutely, man. And hey, to everybody out there who's a viewer, whether you watched it live or you tuned in later, have a great day.